Okay, good morning, everyone, and welcome to Thursday, March 24th, 2022. This is an interlocal workshop between the City of Bradenton and the County Commission of Manatee County. We're going to start our day the way we always start the day here in Manatee County. We're going to start the day by honoring God and by honoring our great nation. So at this time, if you're able, if you would please rise, we have Pastor Jeannie McIntyre of the Altar Church here to lead us in the invocation, after which Commissioner Veteran Reggie Bellamy will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you so much for having me. I am Pastor Jenny McIntyre. I'm also an attorney and a life coach, and it is my pleasure to be here with all you beautiful public servants. Psalm 33 reads, "From heaven the Lord looks down and sees all mankind. From his dwelling place he watches all who live on earth. He who forms the hearts of all, who considers everything they do. Blessed are the people whose God is the Lord." Let's pray. Father, thank you for looking down on us. It is indeed an amazing privilege to live on this earth that you've given us. And we know, Father, that the people in this room are special people. They are people that have dedicated their lives to public service and to make this place a better place to live. And Lord, we understand that our community and the world in general has been trampled upon in the last few years because there's been a lot of heartache associated with a global pandemic. And there have been a lot of challenges associated with it. But we are so happy and so blessed and so thankful that we can again meet in a room and see faces and shake hands and give hugs. That is a blessing, things that before we took for granted, but we don't anymore. And so, Father, as we go about in this meeting, I pray that your wisdom, your grace will be upon every person that is here, the individuals that will be talking, the individuals that will be making decisions. I pray that you will bless this assembly, and I pray that you will bless every person here, not only in their official capacity, but I pray for each one of their homes, their children, their spouses, their family members. I pray for those that are dealing with a personal crisis, whatever that may be. I pray that they will feel your love, your presence, and your kindness. Bless us, O Lord, we pray, in the mighty name of your Son, Jesus. Amen. God bless us.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you both so much. So we're going to start the meeting off with sort of a special agenda item. Today we have a guest, Senator Jim Boyd, who, now that session is over, would like to address both of our bodies. And so he is going to kick things off and give us a legislative update from how things went in Tallahassee. Senator Boyd.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and commissioners, council folks. It's really cool to be here in a joint meeting with all of you all. I generally try to make the rounds and see everybody in your own spot, but the fact that y'all are here today is a special privilege and pleasure for me, so thanks for allowing me. And I know I don't have a lot of time because you have a lot to go over, but I wanted to just give you a little bit of highlight of what happened and what we did. This is week 2 back from being in session, which is awesome. There's nothing like home and our community, and while we did, I think, a lot of good stuff in Tallahassee this year, it's really, really nice to be back home, and I'm almost caught up on my day job stuff, so I'm able to get out and about. And so again, thanks for having me. I would just tell you a couple of things that I worked on this session that got across the finish line. And let me caveat everything I say today with the governor still is going to review the bills that have been sent to him that haven't already been signed. Most of mine are in that batch. He's also going to have the budget in his hands if he doesn't already very soon. And so the things that I'm going to talk about that we were able to do for our community, fingers crossed, cards and letters to him and his staff from you all would be helpful on the things that are important to Manatee County because, and all that's in Manatee County, Bradenton, Palmetto, and the beaches. because he ultimately has veto power over any of those individual budget items. I feel comfortable, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but just FYI, this is all contingent upon our friend the governor agreeing with us on all these issues. One of the things I worked on again this year was overdose prevention. It's been a big problem and something I've had a passion for when I was in the House. So this year it was a very simple bill that we passed, and that was allowing pharmacists the ability to prescribe Narcan. And we know how life-saving Narcan can be. So a caregiver, a family member, a good friend, or a close associate could go in and say to the Walgreens pharmacist after some questions and answers by them that, I'm close to this person, I suspect there may be a chance of an overdose, and they're allowed to have this prescription and administer it in emergency, which does save lives. So that one is there, waiting on signature. The clerk of the courts through the state, and certainly our own clerk, brought some issues to us that help streamline some of their processes and some of the payment of fines, and giving people the ability to work on those issues without losing driver's licenses and the things of that sort in the short run. So that was something that we got across the finish line. We also did a local tax referendum bill. Representative Robinson and I partnered on this, and that's essentially saying if you're a municipality, governmental entity, district, or whatever, you have to have a tax referendum on the general election date. We found a couple of cases around the state and in our community alone where those things were done off cycle. Not only is the voter turnout sometimes, I would argue, a little bit skewed toward who wants what, but more importantly, it's hundreds of thousands of dollars that it cost the community to have those off-cycle elections. So this just lines them up with the general election, which I think makes good fiscal sense and also good policy sense. I did a bill with the Attorney General on retail theft. We've seen all across this country these smash and grabs where groups go in and take a bunch of items and run out, and if there's not certain thresholds that be made or they have to be met, lots of times the Attorney General, the prosecutors in those different communities won't even take the case on. And we just said in Florida that's not going to happen. So we set some thresholds so as to make that a crime. When a group or a small group goes into a place and repeatedly time after another, day after day, week after week, commits these crimes, there's going to be felony penalties attached to those now. So hopefully that will dissuade those that might have ideas of doing those things in Florida, maybe hopefully go somewhere else, or hopefully not do it at all. And then one other thing that I worked on, and Councilman Roth asked me to mention, it was property insurance. Last year we worked on it hard. We got part of our bill across the finish line. The House of Representatives sadly didn't agree with us on some of the reforms that were absolutely necessary, we felt like, so we came at it again this year. I guess the definition of an insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. Well, I'm insane because our constituents, your constituents, my constituents, their homeowners' premiums are just becoming unsustainable. If you get a 10 or 20% increase, and I hate to even say it that way, that's almost like thank the person that brought it to you, because it's that bad. You had your own personal experience of a triple-digit 100% rate increase. I had 35% rate increase, all on the backs of Floridians, while a few contractors and a few rogue attorneys are making millions and millions of dollars. There's one guy in Miami that does it. He boasts about his practice. He's standing in front of his Ferrari with his Pilatus, I think it was. I thought it was a jet. It was a Pilatus plane in back, and he's got a 20,000 square foot home on Key Biscayne. So that's who's making money off this, and we're paying it. So sadly, we didn't get that across the finish line again this year. I did our part. The House didn't agree, and there's rumors that we might go to a special session. I've talked to the governor's team, talked to our team. Until we have some different direction and leadership from our partners in the House, and believe me, there's a lot of House members, including yours here, Tommy and Gregory and Representative Robinson, wanted to do this, but leadership was reluctant. So until we get some clarity as to what may change there, we're probably going to wait. But in November, leadership changes. There's a new Senate president, and there's a new speaker that will be installed after the November election. So I think we have a lot better chance of making reform then. Sadly, I hate for people to have to wait because it's just not fair. But if we can't get anything done, then there's no sense going back to Tallahassee to try to do something that's perhaps impossible. But I'm on it, and we're going to stay on it. And leadership that I'm associated with is very much interested in doing it. Some of the things we were able to bring, and Representative Robinson, Representative Gregory will tell you their components. Some of the things we share together, and some they had on their own with other senators, but we were able to bring about $72 million back to our communities, and I think that's significant. Again, the governor hasn't signed the budget, so there could be some areas where he pays particular attention, and we're communicating pretty regularly with his team, and we hope to be successful. But a couple of the key things that I think are important for us, in Bradenton Beach, we got $3 million for a power line removal project. Holmes Beach, flood mitigation, $2 million. Longboat Key, the force main, $800,000. I'm going to come back to one in just a second. Sanitary sewer, $500,000 for Manatee. Lake Vista out at Anna Maria, a couple $100,000. Shellfish Institute, clams and seagrass restoration, $2.5 million, which I think is significant to help improve our water quality here. Some native oyster project, also expansion of the manatee rehabilitation over at the Bishop Museum. Greenbridge Fishing Pier work to begin, $900,000. And also Centerstone, the Trauma Recovery Center, $750,000 to help in their efforts there. State College of Florida and South Florida down at the Manatee Sarasota campus. And I know New College is not in Manatee County, but also some restoration project for a building down there that desperately needed it, as well as y'all are well aware, Moccasin Wallow Road expansion, and some work on Anna Marie Island on Pine Avenue, and then the beginnings of the pedestrian overpass study and work at US 41, and that's $2.5 million. A lot of conversation I know has to take place on that, but that's at least a start toward looking at that. And then the one I wanted to come back to real briefly is $23 million that we acquired for Rattlesnake Key and the associated properties. I know the county has committed up to $2 million, give or take, maybe a little more, Chairman. I'm kidding. We've committed $2 million at this point because it's a $25 million project. And if you thank anybody, I mean, we worked hard on it, and Representative Robinson partnered with me. If you thank anybody, like I told you when we got the $100 million for Piney Point, that wasn't me. The President of the Senate gave me credit for it, but it wasn't me. It was him that shepherded that through, and the President of the Senate shepherded this $23 million through for us for Rattlesnake Key. So if you can pop a letter to him or you feel inclined, he was the one that really helped us get all of that from Piney Point here across the finish line. Actually, Piney Point was his idea. He called me, and you remember me telling you, and said, I got great news for you. We're going to commit $100 million to this cleanup and restoration of the property. The same with Rattlesnake Key. So those are significant. Rattlesnake Key, not just the sheer beauty of it and where it's located in our coastline, but the resiliency of the coast, some of the things that we can do in that area with the clams and the seagrass and other things, and then make it, ultimately the plan is to make that a state park, as we've talked about before on the Rattlesnake Key portion. And that'll be a place that generations of Floridians and candidly tourists from around the world can come and enjoy. And I'm really excited about that. I did talk specifically to the governor's team about that this morning, as well as the governmental affairs team that's representing the owners of Rattlesnake Key that are advocating on its behalf with the governor as well. And everybody feels very positive about that, but I don't want to overcommit because sometimes you get bit, if no pun intended, maybe snake bit if you say too much. But I feel very comfortable about that, and that'll be just great for our community, something that I'm really looking forward to seeing develop over the years to come. So in a nutshell, we had a great session, $112 billion budget, and that's a lot of money. And when you have that kind of money, it seems like sometimes it's harder to figure out how to spend it, because everybody wants something. And I think we were very fortunate in getting what we got for our community. $71 million is nothing to sneeze at. But it was a pleasure to serve this year. I think we did some really good things. And then next year, we don't do much until after the election, because this is election year for all 160 legislative members. And then we go back in November for our org session, and presuming we get reelected, hopefully, and then start again. And just let me give you a little bit of an update on Piney Point. We're in constant contact with DEP on it. They're running the project. There's $100 million, as we talked about, committed to it. So far has been spent, according to the receiver last week, less than 20 million, 16, 17 million. So we have plenty of money in hand right now. As the need maybe changes through time, we can certainly look at it, but it's a DEP project. All due respect to all of us, myself included, they're the ones running the show. They're convinced and certain that what's being done is proper and the money that's being spent is what needs to be spent. But we have a lot of money left to spend, and that will be spent over the course of time, and then we'll see what happens. And by the way, it's not yet for public disclosure, but there's at least one group that's got some.
Want to say more?
No, I'm going to say more.
Oh, okay.
I realize that. No, the press is here and everything. The concept and the people are not yet for public disclosure, but there's some groups that are looking at Piney Point after it's restored and doing some really cool things out there with respect to education and marine life and just all kinds of interesting things that can happen out there. So they've, I think, made a presentation to DEP already, and we're going to start listening to others that have interest in that property and see what might be the best and highest use of that in terms of what supports our community. So in a nutshell, that's it, Mr. Chairman. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to try to answer them, and apologize if I took more time than I deserve, but there's a lot to get through in a short period of time.
No, thank you, Senator. That was a great update. So, Madam Vice Mayor, and for you and everyone that came from the city today, you have a comment card that they're multicolored today, but you have a comment card. If you wish to comment, just wave the card. You press the button on the microphone once, it will turn green, the little light, and then you're good to speak. I don't have anyone on the board at the moment. Apparently, Senator Boyd did a tremendous job explaining everything that took place in Tallahassee in 16 minutes. So excellent job. I would just say thank you for Rattlesnake Key. It's in my district now. I could not be happier. I'm so glad the county could pitch in the small amount, relatively speaking. It was a large amount to us, but
Every bit helps.
yeah, exactly. And that will certainly be a legacy project for you, and thank you so much for that.
Thanks.
Councilwoman Barnaby.
Senator, can you please tell us the name and weight of one of the newest citizens in Manatee County?
Well, yeah, we had a little granddaughter on Tuesday, Ansley, and my son-in-law Ryan, Emmett Wilder Haskins. She was 6 pounds, 1 ounce, and 19.5 inches, exactly the same size and weight of her little brother, who's now 2 years old when he was born 2 years ago. So I don't know if that means anything, but he ended up being a cool little kid, so hopefully she will be too. Thanks. Thank you.
Wonderful. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thanks. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Commissioner Satcher, I have Commissioner Satcher is on the board as well, sir.
I thought I got out before any tough questions came.
It was close. No, nothing tough. Just a huge thanks, and I think we maybe speak for a lot of us and just saying thank you for going to bat for us, and I think of Moccasin Wallow and procuring those funds. That road's got to get come up to speed. So I appreciate your work on that and more. I start thinking I won't go through all of it, but we really appreciate you. Thank you so much for the good job you're doing.
Sure. Hey, we're all in it together, and there's a lot of tax dollars that go through Tallahassee, and we're entitled to our share. And I've got kind of good hopes about the future and some of my friends that are coming into leadership. So hopefully there'll be more to come in the future, and I'll work hard, as I always have, for our community. That's very important to us. Thanks.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you all.
Okay, so we're going to take one agenda item out of order. We're going to go with the number 3, the comprehensive plan / workforce housing. We'll take that up first. The chamber has been very supportive of this meeting. I know they sent out an email to their members letting them know that it would be taking place today, and I know that Mayor Shirley Groover Bryant from Palmetto told me she would be watching from home as well. This meeting sort of came about in a discussion between Mayor Brown and myself, and we got into the discussion of the comp plan, and that's why we're ultimately here, is the comp plan discussion. And the county is interested in addressing their comp plan, and he said the city was interested in addressing theirs as well. And we know that the city limits sort of like a jigsaw puzzle. And sometimes on one side of the street you can do something, and the other side of the street you can't. So we thought, for uniformity, perhaps we should look at hiring the same firm at the same time to do it together. And thought if we sat down here today, we could give them some direction or come up with some direction as to what we would be looking for. Probably won't be the only meeting that we have together if we decide to take that up jointly. So as we get started, I'm going to turn to Commissioner Servia, who is an educated and accredited planner and has worked as a planner in Manatee County for many years. And sort of let her give us like a quick, couple-minute tutorial on comp plans and let her weigh in on whether she thinks this is a good idea or not. Commissioner Servia, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And all right, I appreciate that. So we all know what a comprehensive plan is, right? It outlines our goals and strategies for a community at a broad scale, right? And it kind of helps us, then it's a guide. And for the more detailed regulations, we turn to our land development code. But I like what you said, there's an opportunity where we share a border with the city of Bradenton to maybe talk about, where it makes sense to have some common regulations so that development is easier for someone who wants to come in and do affordable housing. That's what we're here talking about today, right? In my opinion, we need to raise densities, and the city has done that. Of course, they're smaller and tighter, and density is more appropriate in their smaller areas. But as we look at Manatee County and some of the major roadways that we have where we've already designated urban corridors, there may be an opportunity to increase the densities and work hand in hand with the city through maybe an interlocal agreement might be the mechanism that we do it. And I look to the attorneys when I say that. We used to have something called the Accord, which might be a bad example because I'm not sure how well it worked. But along those same lines, just a formal letter or a memorandum of understanding that says we both jurisdictions want and desire good, affordable housing for our citizens, and this is what we're going to do to get there.
Thank you, ma'am. Commissioner Whitmore is on the board. Commissioner Whitmore.
I think that's a great idea. None of us individual boards have discussed this amongst ourselves, and I just got done watching your guys' meeting, and so I'm, and you've watched ours, I'm sure. So we'll have to talk about it with our individual boards. But I do think there, and like you have form-based coding, which I still don't understand what that is. So, but there are a lot of things that we could do together. And I guess who's ever put this on the agenda, this is a good idea especially for the borders of the county and the city. And again, that's up to our separate governing bodies, but the more we all work together, the easier it is for the people that are living in our communities. So I think it's a good idea. I don't know who put this on the agenda, Mr. Chair?
The mayor and I put this on the agenda.
Good. Okay, I think it's a good idea that we all talk about it individually. Now, remember, if we do decide to hire the same person, when we do our RFP, you can piggyback and do it together. That's how I remember when I was mayor on the island, but we can do that. So if that's something that's more cost efficient for all of us, that's something we can all look at.
Thank you. Councilman Roth.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to point out that basically the city's been doing a very good job of, affordable housing, both done in the works and moving forward. When you look at it, just as for an FYI, it's literally all in the community redevelopment agencies. We have 3 community redevelopment agencies, which are in the downtown core. So that's literally how we get them funded and financed is through TIF go back. So as you're looking at that, it's kind of, for one thing, the developers are always going to go for whatever incremental assets they can get, and that's literally how we do it there. So.
Sure. Thank you. And I think one of the big questions, too, would be, I'm a realtor, and I'm wondering, is affordable housing, is downtown, the downtown core, is that where we want to target affordable housing? Or are there corridors, like the mall is a great opportunity for the county, 55 acres. It's been discussed at our meetings a couple of times. Commissioner Cruz and I have even mentioned unlimited density and unlimited height at the mall. And then you have like 9th as a corridor that leads all the way down there. Is that something that we would want to address in a particular manner in the code? Commissioner Cruz and then Servia.
Thanks. Yeah, I think this is the kind of heart and soul of this meeting and subsequent meetings, because as we hear from everyone, this is the most important thing on everyone's mind, and rightfully so. Because where you live is critically important, and we're pricing everybody out of our market. So, I've met with with Mayor Brown and spoken with him, and Councilman Sanders and I had breakfast 2 weeks ago, I guess it was, and discussed it. And it sounds like both boards are on the same page. It's just a matter of getting it done. And I always say it's like part of the issue we have, even though we have our council of governments meeting 4 times a year, everyone always seems to point to everyone else, because I hear people come to us and say, why aren't you building more in the urban core and stop sprawling out east? And we say, well, that's not our property. That's the city of Bradenton's or city of Palmetto's. And then they go to you guys and say, why are you charging all these impact fees and connectivity? And you say, oh, that's not really us. That's more the county. Go talk to them. And then we all turn to the school board and say, what's up with your impact? Everyone's independent. So at some point, we all just need to get together and say, okay, everyone has to contribute something for the good of Manatee County as a whole. How do we piece that together so we're all on the same page? How do we get it where the increased density is where it should be? Because you asked the question, Chairman, is density right downtown? It's exactly right downtown. It's the exact right place where affordable housing should be. I'm not saying build a 100% affordable housing project, because that's not always the best use of land, but having mixed income properties in the core of downtown is where it should be, because transportation costs factor into housing. And the closer you can put everybody, regardless of if it's market rate for young professionals or it's affordable housing or workforce housing or just standard family units, they're all going to serve their purpose. Somebody's working in this hotel over here. Someone's working down at O'Bricks in these restaurants on Old Main. At the same time, someone's going to go work at Bank of America and JP Morgan. If we put everybody closer to their employment, we're helping our infrastructure because we're taking cars off the road. We're helping transportation costs that makes quality of life better and cost of living better. So we need to start figuring out how to get the higher density here like everyone else has. And I'm not saying turn it into Fort Lauderdale and Las Olas by any stretch of the imagination, because that's what we always get accused of as soon as you say you want to build something more than 2 stories. But there's a smart way of doing it, and land is expensive, but air is free. And the more you can amortize the cost of land over a higher number of units, the cheaper the land becomes, and therefore the cheaper the units themselves become. So that's what we all need to work on, is how do we encourage this development as a county within the confines of the city limits, through impact fees, through additional incentives, through whatever we can offer, through commitments to infrastructure, similar to what just happened with the Chick-fil-A. There was a commitment to, you are approving something as a city of Bradenton, but we're effectively contributing something by putting infrastructure funds towards making sure that becomes viable and we're not hindering that overall intersection. That was a good use of 2 groups coming together for a like-minded purpose of the community. That's the conversations we need to have, is not point fingers at you do this or we do that. It's how do we all collectively do something? And saying let's work together on a comp plan is very important, because you run into situations where, and I talk to developers that say, like we just said, one side of the road I can do this, but the other side of the road is that. You can't have one side of the road say you can build 15 stories, the other side of the road is 3. That's not efficient. We need to have some sort of a buffer where we have some commonality in terms of incentives you can get and density and height you can get, and tier this, and it's going to transcend one boundary from the other. It's going to transcend it from city of Palmetto to city of Bradenton to unincorporated, and it's got to be seamless for the developers. Otherwise, it's cost prohibitive for the developers to jump through that many hoops for something like this. So we do all, in fact, need to work together, even if we basically staff our departments to almost come up with a buffer form-based code surrounding the city of Bradenton's boundary, so we can kind of incorporate yours, which I love your form-based code. I think you guys have a much better code than we have. But granted, it's a lot easier to do on a city level than a county level. But we can incorporate it and kind of blend it into the unincorporated to make this look seamless, not only for developers, but for the citizens. Because it's jarring to have big buildings next to small buildings. You want that tiered approach. You want to start near the river and then work your way down. So I think this is an important conversation, and one that will take more than one step, and we'll just go just from this board to, people on the administrative side working together to make this happen. But I think we're years and years almost too late to have the conversation, but again, today is better than tomorrow. So we need to start having this conversation now, and I think have it in some sort of an expeditious manner.
Yeah, really well said and articulated, Commissioner. The order of the board is Servia, Barnaby, Coachman, Whitmore. Commissioner Servia.
Yes, thank you, and really great comments. Very well said, Commissioner Cruz. And so, so some of the opportunities that I see are transit opportunities and challenges, right? So we want to have more density so we can have more units at a lower price point in certain areas. And then one of the challenges may be transportation and parking. For example, the DeSoto Square Mall site, where I think you said unlimited density, unlimited height. Great. So then it's only really governed or restricted by parking. I mean, that's what's going to be the hiccup, is how many cars can you get on the ground floor, on the asphalt? And we don't really, it's not really a good look. So is there an opportunity by looking at a site like that to say, we currently have buses running every 30 minutes. Maybe in this area, we could run them every 15 minutes, you know, in the areas where employment is. Just an example, right? But what I'd like for us to do, for the city and the county to do, is to tackle a pilot project together. Decide on an area, maybe it's DeSoto Square Mall, I don't know where it would be, and say, let's try some things in this area. This is what we're going to do. And let's see if we can build some success in doing it in a smaller area, and then take it throughout the county. So I hope that this discussion, which can be very broad, and this can lead us to studies and, you know, all sorts of things that don't really produce action in the ground, and that's what we as bureaucrats have to be careful of. We want action. We want to create units for people to live in, because I got people burning up my phone saying they're being kicked out, they can't afford the rent, they have no place to go. And I have business owners who say, I can't get employees here because they can't afford to live here. So we need to really make sure we can do something, and we got to drill down to a smaller scale. Maybe it's partnering with a business that is in the city and can do housing in the county, or vice versa. But let's pick a project together and let's go.
Thank you, Commissioner. Councilwoman Barnaby.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's green, so I'm on, right? Okay, I'm sorry. Okay. So far, I have agreed with what everyone has said, and I was sitting here listening to Commissioner Cruz, and I was thinking, ooh, it's like, I was kind of, because I was making notes about what I was going to say, and then you hit several of the topics. I think it's important when we're talking about density and improvements in all of our areas, we can't just have affordable housing in the urban core. We have schools throughout the county. We have services throughout the county, firemen, firefighters. We've got to start looking at making sure that there are mixed areas within the areas that we currently have, because otherwise it's not going to work. The other thing is, I think it's going to be crucially important to make sure that we have citizen input with everything that we do, as well as we help educate people with what the specific terms are with housing, because you'll hear somebody that will confuse low income and Section 8, affordable housing, workforce housing, and there are all very specific definitions with these things when you're talking about, you know, the HUD and their department. But I think it's very important to our community that we have a working dictionary that everybody can refer to and everybody can agree with. I think that's going to be important as well. I agree with needing transportation that's going to work well. When I was on the MPO, I kept saying we need rolling Starbucks with Wi-Fi, and then we would solve the mass transit problem, because people would do that. That would come every 10 minutes. They absolutely. I know that there would be a lot of people that would park their car if they could get a cup of coffee, get on some type of transportation system, be able to do a little bit of work before they get to the office. I think, or schoolwork. I think it'd be great. So I'm very interested in doing this. I think we can work together because there's more things that unite us than divide us. And I'm very hopeful about this process.
Thank you. The order of the board is Coachman, Whitmore, Sanders, Roth. Madam Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I cannot say how appreciative I am that the mayor and Chairman Van Ostenbridge got together and thought this would be a good thing to do. Two of the things I said maybe irked me most when I became a councilwoman was, one, government moves way too slowly. Two, I can't understand why the governing entities not work together closer, because all your concerns, all of our concerns are the same, pretty much. And the only way we can solve these are to work together. Transportation, they're county roads, they're city roads. We have to work together. And housing, we've done projects in the city, and they were filled 100% capacity once they were completed, and then they have 500 other people on a waiting list. So I just can't express enough appreciation, and I'm hoping that this is one of many, and that we really do come up with a pilot-type program or an initiative and see how this can go.
Thank you, ma'am. Commissioner Whitmore.
I think we should commit that we do this in 3 months. I mean, you are 100% right that this government is way too slow. So I think in order us to keep the momentum going, after today's meeting, we should come back and gather and see where we've gotten. Because when you have individual boards, it gets lost, and one person will say something, and then it's gone for a while. I had brought up, and others had brought up, on our end about light industrial, mixing it with residential, because we have partners that are coming into town, businesses that want to actually offer housing for their employees. I don't know, and I don't know what your rules are also. I just wanted to bring that up. Also, I mentioned because of a situation that Mr. Rudisell had where I live, churches. They would love to sell their property, some of it, because usually it's a large piece of property, and mix it with residential. And we are also looking at that. Commissioner Cruz is more or less our person that's doing affordable housing, and so I had asked at the last meeting that he also include that. I'm letting you all know in case, because I don't know what you do. Transit, you are 100% right. You know, many years ago, I started the trolley, went from 60 a day to 2,000 a day ridership because it was guaranteed service. And the coffee and the Wi-Fi is, this is, as we all know, we don't make money in transit, but it will be utilized if you can be guaranteed to get someplace. Commissioner Bellamy had brought up, and he has brought up recently at the last meeting, that we have churches that are going to be allowing homeless people to use their parking lots to sleep in their cars. So we do have a problem, and this is not going to be solved easily. So, this is I think we all can, during COVID and everything that's happened, this has kind of hit us all. We're the second fastest growing county in the state of Florida. Lakewood Ranch is the fastest growing master plan community in the United States. So we have a lot of work to do, and we have a lot of employees that don't live here. They live in Pinellas and in Hillsborough because of our housing. So whatever we can do to work together. But again, I think we should, I know Commissioner Cruz is meeting with a group, and I'm not exactly sure who's all on it, but I know the mayor is and other organizations. But I really think we need to all be kept in the loop, and maybe every 3 months get together and see where we are, if we are this passionate about it, which I know we are.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner. Sanders, Roth, Bellamy is the order. Councilman Sanders.
Thank you, Chairman. A few comments that I'll have on other comments that have been made. As Mr. Cruz said, he and I and the school board have been working together for how to make affordable housing more affordable with waiver of impact fees, et cetera. And I'll have to say that I believe the city of Bradenton takes the lead on that, and because we do, if anything, we could only be accused of giving too much, not enough, because all of our projects that we've had, our impact fees have been waived. You know, a lot of money's been given to it, so, and we've opened the door for more of that to come. So I think we're ahead of the game and a living example of how that has performed. Two, annexation was a big issue with me all the 4 years I've been here. And it's because of the jaggedness of how it got, and we could talk about that forever. But to me, it should be made a little simple with a straight line. You know, just take a ruler and go from one end to the other end, and what's on one side and the other side, because we have not only problems with that, we have problems with the fire department, the police department. Well, whose call is this? I don't know. I still today, after this is jaggedness, have been in here for years and years, there's still firemen that don't know, and police officers. And I had one individual call me and said they was arguing over whose accident was supposed to handle the call. I said, that's a sad situation that you don't know which department, which city or county knows how to handle the call. So that to me is a pretty high priority. The DeSoto Mall, that's actually a county property. If you'd like to give it to the city, we'd be more than happy to put affordable housing out there. But you know, there's a but we'll take your money with that. I mean, you know, it's a 50 acres plus $20 million. I think I could do that. So I'll offer that to you. But seriously, the connectivity from Ninth Street down is something that could be done jointly, because it goes right by our ballpark, and it's a mess, as you know. And we've tried to do it, but it's hard to get it done because it's got some homelessness in that area. But those are things that we could do jointly with the mall and transportation down through there with busing with the county, because you have the transport, we don't, and we're never going to have it. And and like I say, I'd like to see more of our busing transport going to the Anna Maria Islands and so forth, like Sarasota does. I see the advertisements on TV every night where they've got this, it's a fancy little term they're using for the bus that goes out there, and I think it's probably getting increased ridership. Now, we all know we have a problem with the bridges, but those are coming up to be built, and you guys need to advocate for dedicated lanes for these buses for transport. That is probably the easiest, best way to solve it, because you already have the transportation network in place. So it's now getting a dedicated lane out to, and I know Misty Surrey's looking at me, she's big on this, and I think Carol Whitmore is too. So that is something that you guys can help, and we could do something else with that, possibly in Bradenton. Industrial and residential mixed. Great idea, but we don't have any industrial in the city of Bradenton that I'm aware of. It looks like industrial sometimes, but it's not really that way. So, and I know there's new affordable housing, I think it's bill number 319 or something, where you're able, is that correct? Bill number 319, where you're able to put affordable housing out there without rezoning it. It's automatic, you know, it's like, hey, here it is, do it. So, but if there's something that would be connecting to Bradenton, that would be great. You know, we would participate. I believe. I'm not speaking for everyone, but that's my thoughts. Here's a good one for all of you. The scaffolding downtown that's been there since 1922 around the Judicial center. Are we ever going to see it removed, or should we just decorate it? Please, somebody can respond to that, because it's been about 5 years, and I know there's a lawsuit. So please don't tell me about the lawsuit.
Sir, to be clear, that's on the agenda under publicly held downtown properties.
Okay.
We just haven't reached that segment of the agenda.
All right, I'm ahead of the game, so good. Give me credit. That's enough for now. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Roth.
Yeah, thank you. So moving forward, certainly, I think the mall is a great opportunity, and I think one of the biggest assets about it is, you know, just the availability of land and really surface parking. And then the idea of light industrial and housing, I actually think that might work right around the south central part of the city, that there's neighborhoods in the south part of the city that's not doing great, south of the village. But then you go over into the county where it's industrial in the county. We don't have any industrial, but maybe that's something that we need to look at. I've always thought of it as, why don't we have light industrial somewhere? I know a lot of friends of mine that have made good money with the light industrial shops in one manner or another. So anyway, that's something that can be worked on. Going back to, so how do we get there? When I ran for office in 2005, I was up against a no-growth candidate, and growth was hot then. It was a bad word, and I said, well, I'm about smart growth, and so then when I got elected, I'm like, okay, now I got to practice smart growth. So I studied new urbanism. There's, urban planning. Dr. Richard Florida, I followed him around, and then learned about learn, play, and live. But what I found out is, as we're able to get projects, how do we get a successful project done in our CRAs, because that's where we have them. I'll go through it. We do density credits. That's a city. We do height credits. That's a city. Parking credits. That's through the city. We may build parking with community redevelopment funds, but there has to be inside a community redevelopment zone. Impact fees are city, building fees, planning fees are in the city. But then here's where we get into that the people are drawn to is the tax increment financing, the rebate on the TIF. So, and that's a big one. And then we go as far as we would loan money, long-term loans at really attractive. So our problem then is the most attractive stuff that we have. We can do all these things. When I said it's a city, that means we can do it anywhere in a city. But it tends to all be in the community redevelopment agencies, because really what they want is the tax increment financing and sometimes maybe possibly a loan or a bridge loan or something like that. So that makes it hard for us to do something with the mall. But I've always said I think the mall is a great opportunity, because one of the biggest things is parking. Parking's a big issue. People have cars. And the one thing about the mall is you have so much surface parking. It's close to transit and everything like that, but people are reluctant to give up their cars. But anyway, that's where I think probably the biggest opportunity is. I just don't know how we go about the city helping you in something that's out of our jurisdiction, and most importantly, out of the CRA.
Sure, thank you. So just to be totally clear, the county does not own the mall.
Right.
The idea would be that we could rezone the parcel, or the parcels. I think it's comprised of 4 or 5 parcels. That would be the general thought process there. I really like your ideas about the south central part of the city leading down 41 and 9th to the county. Mm-hmm. The order of the board is Bellamy, Cruz, Servia, Sanders. Commissioner Bellamy.
Yeah, I won't be long. I'm glad we cleared that up about the mall, so we can make sure when we're here talking and we're attempting to identify our options, we come up with action steps that are within the SMART goals, specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, right? And it'll be a little difficult to make moves on the mall and we don't own it. But I do think as we sit around, if there's some murmuring about coming back for another 90 days before we leave, let's identify what are we coming back to discuss and what action do we want to take between now and these next 90 days, so we can make sure that we're moving and the community is aware that we're collaborating together and we're moving. I did want to make a comment about the homeless church parking from what Commissioner Whitmore was stating. There are churches that are aware that the homeless family issue has increased. The individuals don't have housing, but they have vehicles, and they're sleeping in their vehicles. And there's a lot of momentum to try to make sure people, get them off their property. So some commercial areas are allowing it, some commercial areas are not allowing it. Some churches are stepping up and identifying, saying, listen, you can actually park here. But the concern was about the security overnight, and it was not for walk-up homeless. They come and start sleeping on the church parking lot. It was for those families that were experiencing those difficult times and kind of trying to give them an opportunity to park somewhere safe, and the mobile showers would come there so they could have showers and things of that. A lot of that's ongoing discussion, but I want to make sure that it's clear the intent is to address the homeless crisis that we are experiencing for the individuals that have their vehicles but don't have housing at this particular point in time. So I just wanted to clear that up.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Cruz.
You were short. Yeah, I'm still writing. I was just going to point out, we don't own the mall. It's a private lender owns the mall and is selling it to a private person. It is something we actually tried to do. I actually have multiple conversations with that lender to try to acquire it as a county, but we don't own it. So we'll see what happens when that becomes public on who is under contract to buy it. Relative to the light industrial, I think that was more of an example. Not specific to light industrial and what the city or the county does or does not have. The reality is in today's market, with few exceptions, and I think I said this the other day, virtually every zoning designation should be residential as of right, because we need residential. And if I put 6 or 8 units next to light manufacturing or light industrial, they're going to rent accordingly. It's not my job to say, oh, it's going to be too loud for the person who lives there or too dusty. They'll just pay less rent, and somebody's going to happily pay $500 for a little inconvenience of noise as opposed to moving into a Class A apartment complex. But here's the things we can kind of work on, because that was kind of discussion, and just some things I'm thinking. Like, yes, to Councilwoman Barnaby's point, you can't just have all the affordable housing done here. That doesn't make sense. First off, that's detrimental to any community, because that just becomes a bigger problem from a school standpoint, from a security standpoint. It's got to be spread out, because you do need employment everywhere. You do have schools everywhere. You do have services everywhere. It doesn't help my infrastructure to put everybody in downtown and then have them drive to go work at the Panera in Lakewood Ranch, because they're still on a road. They're just going the other direction. So it does need to be included. But, while the conversation, rightfully so, is more focused on affordable and workforce and attainable here, because that's the hot topic, the reality is for someplace like an urban core, the topic really just needs to be all housing to some extent, because the reality is it snowballs. You could focus on affordable housing all you want, but there's not sufficient rooftops of any kind in either of our urban cores at this point in time, or Manatee County as a whole for that matter, but we're focusing here. And the more house you can get here, the more smaller units for young professionals, the more apartments and condos you can get down here, then the more employment will come down here, because their workforce is down here. Once you get those rooftops, that's when you get the grocery stores down here and the additional bars and restaurants and services down here, and it builds upon itself. I mean, you look at downtown Sarasota, like let's use a core example because it's newer, Rosemary. Until the new project, which is coming out of the ground or just came out of the ground on, I think, Lemon, there was no affordable housing in Rosemary. But prior to that, it was all blighted buildings and empty fields. They put 1,800 units there. Granted, none of it was affordable, and that was their mistake for not tying their increased density to it. But they got restaurants, they got bars, they got boutique shops, they got all kinds of things there, and that encouraged more employment base. So, and now they're starting to add the affordability to it. They started a little late on that, so I'm not encouraging that. But the point is, rooftops bring retail and bring employment because of the workforce. So I think it needs to be a global and not just focus solely on the affordable side of things. Affordable is great. If it's 10% of a project or 25% of a project, it becomes inclusionary. It helps balance out the school system and helps balance out the security, helps balance out the workforce. So I think it needs to be a bigger picture. But a few of the things we can all be looking at here, and I'm just throwing it out there. One is we've been talking, or at least I've been talking, but I think the collective board to some extent was in agreement, that we need to start looking as a county at some level of land banking, because we have the ability, and by extension within your boundaries, you have the ability to adjust the zoning on any land that we own and acquire. We're looking at some of our current property right now, and that's what we were doing with the mall. The conversation was if we were able to get the mall, we could increase density, increase height, which increases value, and it allows us to put deed restrictions on there and then sell it back off or lease it back off to a developer, and then they can do things based upon that deed restriction. So we've got the wherewithal to do that from a financing standpoint. We have the desire to do that from a board policy standpoint. So that's one way the city and county can work together, is where we can be working towards land banking selectively, especially down urban corridors where we need this development, the infrastructure and the services are in place for the development. That's one way we can start considering working together, is where can the county come in and facilitate some level of jointly acquiring property to rezone the property to allow developers to build what this community needs. Second thing is, you're right. You guys are the ones giving up a lot of this stuff relative to impact fees and so on and so forth to get things done. Well, there could be some conversation about, and I don't know the framework, and that's going to be above my pay grade, but having some level of a joint affordable housing fund where there can be some shared focus towards covering some impact fees and so forth. Because at the end of the day, you're using the impact fees for roads, and no one knows if they're driving on a county road or a city road at the end of the day. It's in everyone's interest. So just you giving up impact fees doesn't do us as a county any good either. So maybe that's some way we can contribute towards facilitating it. Maybe that encourages getting more density and more restrictions, because now you're not giving up 100% of your impact fees. You're giving up a portion because we're effectively contributing through this shared fund. So it encourages more affordable housing approval. And the third thing, like I said previously, is just getting your staff and our staff and everyone together and coming up with some commonality of zoning, especially in these core areas. Like, you can't go down 9th and leave the city and enter unincorporated and switch your entire zoning process. That's inefficient for everybody. It won't make the corridor flow properly. So, that's the third thing, is starting to tie our two plans together, at least in the surrounding area. So those are at least three, just throw it off the top of my head, things as actionable stuff we can at least talk about.
No, good. Oh, she's not able to buzz herself in. I didn't think of that. So Commissioner Baugh and Mayor Brown are both with us on Zoom. I just want to let everyone know that. I have just a quick question for perhaps Mr. Rudisil. Is the city able with CRA money can put CRA money towards a land bank? Is that something that could be done with CRA money?
Yeah, I mean, the primary limitation the city's going to have is that, or the CRA is going to have, is that it's going to have to be something that would benefit the CRA. So it would, I mean, certainly if we're talking about, potential sites that are within the CRA, that would be something that could be done.
Okay, because your CRA, you have one that runs down 9th all the way to the city limit, I'm pretty positive, right? And 14th? 14th Street CRA, but you don't have one on 9th? That is the 14th Street CRA. That is the 14th Street CRA. Okay, so that simplifies it. So the 14th Street CRA runs down 9th Street. Okay, perfect. So Servia and Sanders are the order of the board. Commissioner Servia.
Yes, thank you very much. Yesterday, I met with a group called Stream. Has anyone else heard of them or met with them? Stream, yeah. And I don't remember what the acronym stands for, unfortunately, but they are a group of faith-based leaders, and they're growing, and their sole focus is affordable housing. And what can they do? And they spent about an hour with me asking some really good questions. They seem motivated and energetic, so if you haven't met with them, I would encourage you to do so. But one of the things that I talked with them about, and I don't know much about it, is what Hillsborough County has done. Hillsborough County created a housing trust fund, some of you may know, and it has a $10 million allocated to it annually. And that money, I think, comes from Hillsborough County's general tax fund. I'm not sure on that. I do know it's $10 million. And a housing trust fund will help you to make loans to people, low-interest loans, help you to, you can do any sort of thing with it. You just develop the guidelines. And so as I sit here and think about ways that we can collaborate, I wonder, is there an opportunity to establish a regional housing trust fund? I don't know the answer to that. That's going to be to the attorneys to figure out. But that might be something that we think about and ways to fund it. What would a revenue source be? Could it be money from a TIF or et cetera? So we need to do something that's going to, like we've talked about, result in some action pretty quickly. The reason I like housing trust funds is they're more flexible than the CRA funding. You can do some pretty innovative things, but again, I turn to the attorneys. The numbers that I have heard is for every dollar invested, you can leverage $7 in housing from a housing trust fund. The other thing I've talked about quite a bit since I sat in this seat is ways to work with our largest employers to offer some sort of housing and or transportation. You know, and if you just think of the school district, for example, if the school district, one of our largest employers, were to encourage their employees to work near where they live, take Palmasola Elementary, where my kids went to school. If we had people who live in West Bradenton working there instead of working at the elementary schools out east, boy, wouldn't that help us with our traffic congestion? And maybe there's a way to incentivize that sort of location, an employment and housing relationship. I don't know how you do that, but if we had the school board at the table, I'd like for us to think about ways of doing that. And think about a restaurant like Anna Maria Oyster Bar, who can't hire enough servers and employees. Is there an opportunity for them to somehow purchase or rent or develop a partnership with people who have homes in the area to provide housing as part of the benefits of working at their business? Is that an opportunity in a business model that works? I don't know. But these are some of the things that I hope that we can all talk about together.
Yeah, I actually worked for a company in Alaska in a town of 918 people. We had roughly 3,000 seasonal workers that would come in every summer. So virtually every company had, employee housing. It's Councilman Sanders.
Okay, thank you. If you can get a high-rise apartment out there in Anna Maria Island, and I'll work at Oyster Bar, okay?
We're just aiming for a high-rise parking garage.
Hard parking. Okay. Hey, Misty, I'm still waiting on your email for the land trust. I'm not disagreeing with you or agreeing with you, but I proposed that to you a couple weeks ago in an email. Maybe it didn't go through or something. So I think you got more knowledge about land trust than probably anybody in the room. You didn't see my email. Okay. But I'd like to have more data on that to see if that's a possibility, because I think that's how all government entities surrounding can maybe share in some of this, but I don't know the legalities of it, so that's something that somebody else. But it's a good starting point. So that's one. The DeSoto thing, I did that kind of more or less of a sarcastic joke, because a couple of weeks ago, I know you told me it was under contract. You didn't tell me who it was, so I didn't know if maybe it was a county. But I thought, they may, just because it's under contract doesn't mean that it's a done deal. They could come back and say, we can't afford it. County, you could buy it. But anyway, that's just for matter of record there. And Mr. Cruz, I work with you very well, I think, unless you're going to tell me differently. But because we must think alike or something with comprehensive plans, et cetera, because I heard your speech at Tiger Bay, and you delivered it just right after I gave my speech to City Hall that may or may not have went over well, but I believe in looking at the big picture and not just little bits and pieces at a time, because they're pet projects or whatever. Matter of fact, pet projects. I read something in the paper where all commissioners have a pet fund. No? Oh.
Don't believe everything you read in the paper.
Absolutely, but I had to ask. Okay, never mind. I'm just teasing you, and don't get, I'm trying to be nice. TIF money, we like to have more of it if you can see fit, but the county does have money, used to have their own, basically, CRA, now you just do it, and you still do? Okay, so for example, like 14th Street, and I'm on the MPO board, and 14th Street has already got a pretty good plan, it's pretty well in process, and there's some money available there to make that corridor into the city of Bradenton, and I think we need to be looking at that, because where we stop, you start, and we need to make that a more walkable, and I think Mr. Roth would agree with me, because he's putting apartments in there now that's for the villages, so I think we can actually not use that as a cut-through for Tamiami Trail down to Sarasota to make it more livable and friendly to the environment, which would increase housing and so forth. So please take a look at that. That's something we could almost immediately start together. We have 3 or 4 streets in the city that are actually a county that causes us a problem. I know once in my area, in Mrs. Coachman's area, is 27th Street. Goes right by the Pirates baseball training camp, and there's a school there, and now there's development on the south side, and that is just going to get worse. We've got to do something with that, and I mean, we got to start now because it's going to get, it's already a problem, but it's going to get worse. So that's something that jointly, possibly, we could work together on because we have some property, and that is in, I believe, the CRA of Ward 5. So that is something we could work on immediately. 27, 26, and congratulations on 23rd, but the Chick-fil-A.
43rd.
43rd Chick-fil-A. So I see that that's already in the process, and that's good. That's a commitment you made.
We have 3.9 million allocated to that intersection.
Right. Thank you very much, because I didn't know if you was, I didn't know if 3.9 million, it must be an inside joke or something.
Well, it was a contested 3.9 million during the meeting. That's why he's winking at me.
Yeah, I understand. But I hope it's going to turn out good, and maybe the mayor, I don't know, he may have to give up part of his funeral home for that. I don't have a clue. I'm just teasing if he's on the list. And, hey, did you hear that, Mayor? There's other streets, though, that run through the city that the county owns and so forth that we could be working on, should have already been working on now. Another thing I'd like to, I'm just going to bring it up. I'd like to talk about this $25 million that comes through tourism, because that is dramatically increased this year. At least that's what I've heard. And we don't need to be advertising for more people to come. We need to be using that to do other things. And I know there's state limitations by statute of what we can do and what we can't do. I think we need to revisit that, because that's a large chunk of money that can be shared with other government entities, but I know there's rules. I don't know all the rules, so that's $25 million that we could look at. And the last thing is employee incentives. Well, I have not seen any government around here that's really given out much government incentives. Now, we do that with Sons. We give them like $1,750 per employee if they bring in employees, and those salaries are somewhere between $50,000 and $150,000. And we brought in, I think, well over 100 employees, and like I say, that's an average salary of $75,000 to $80,000. I'm sorry, you do it all the time? Okay. Do you? Well, you need to brag more about it, because I hadn't heard. But those are critical, because now when you increase salaries, you have helped affordable housing, because now it's more affordable for those increased salaries, because now you take away, and I always say, we don't have to create more housing. If we raise the wages of the people, then it's more affordable for everyone.
Thank you, sir. Councilwoman Coker, you have not weighed in yet. If you want to give some final thoughts before we move on to the next agenda item, thoughts on the comp plan.
Very
Thank you.
quickly, because I just mostly wanted to listen today. I'm really glad we're all getting together. I think that what I appreciate the affordable housing. As a realtor, I understand firsthand how tough it is for buyers and renters and everything right now. But I really want to encourage that we not just look at affordable housing. I think we need to have, it's all about supply and demand, so we need more supply. We need market rate, we need affordable, we need workforce. And so it concerns me when it's all about affordable housing. I would, and I don't think, and I appreciate Councilwoman Barnaby saying it shouldn't all be right in the downtown core. It needs to be spread around. So, but of course, for this meeting, it makes sense that we discuss it. But I also was glad to hear that there's still a TIF on Tamiami Trail, because I think that looks terrible, and that's the gateway to our downtown. And I'd really like to see us put some attention there. I know we did a micromobility study that talked about doing some improvements on the road there, and it just makes sense that it would carry on down through the county. So I'd definitely like to make sure that we include that in this.
Thank you, ma'am. And I have had discussions with property management and public works about median and sort of streetscaping improvements to 14th Street because of that very thought that it's the gateway to downtown.
And traffic calming,
Yeah.
some of it'll, we don't want to slow
14th
down.
and Cortez is always pretty calm when I go through, unfortunately. I usually want to go quicker.
Well,
but
should we bring up all the pedestrians that have been added there at Cortez and 41?
that's the state. It's a state road. So I have Bellamy and Whitmore on the board. Commissioner Bell, and it's 2:39, but anyway, Commissioner Bellamy.
Yes, I'm aware that the chair is trying to wrap this one up, so I'll move very quickly in respect to his desires. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think we've identified, or Commissioner Cruz identified, 2 or 3 areas we can go in, so we can come back in the next 90 days when we start talking about land banking, maybe from the city of Bradenton or from the county. We come up with some options as far as the land banking, as far as within the next 90 days. That's an action step that we could potentially move on. As far as the joint affordable housing fund, I'm sure our attorneys and the city of Palmetto and the city of Bradenton attorneys probably should come together, because if we are going to look at it from a county perspective, we need to make sure we, bring the city of Palmetto in when we're talking about the joint affordable housing. So what options do we have legal as far as within the next 90 days or whenever our next meeting is, as well as the regional housing trust fund that was brought forward. To me, that's a way for us to move on it collectively, for us to make sure that even in areas, if it's not within the core, there's a lot of growth out east, and we could plan for it if we have that regional trust fund. And I think when we start talking about collective, the downtown properties, I'll make a comment on 27th Street options. But I do think we have some action steps, so we don't just spin our wheels the next time we talk.
You have to turn your microphone, we're televised, you have to have your microphone on.
The school board, Mr. Cruz and I meet with a school board representative, and I don't want to forget them, that I haven't heard them mentioned, but the school board is looking right now at waiving impact fees and looking at excess properties that they might be able to do for this.
And I agree, and this is why it's so important for all of us to attend the government and council's meeting, so we can make sure at topics like this, you have everybody at the table, and then we can hear from everyone, and we can potentially get some action steps and then some solutions so we can make our county greater, not great.
And Commissioner Bellamy, I think we had briefly discussed adding this to the Council of Governments meeting, on the next agenda. Would you take the lead on making sure that's on that agenda?
Yes, sir, I will.
Thank you, sir. I have Whitmore and Roth on the board. We're going to try to wrap this up and then do a public comment on it, because I think several of the people who came wanted to speak on this specific agenda item. Commissioner Whitmore is foregoing her floor time, so the floor is yours, Councilman Roth.
Yeah, thank you again. So the Tamiami Trail is a past member to see MPO, past chair of the MPO. The Tamiami Trail Scenic Highway is it's all the way from Palmetto to Venice. Basically, it'd be very easy to add any part of that into, and I think the Manatee's done several sections of that. It's all through Sarasota, but there is a fast track way of getting that done, since the program has already started and we're missing it. I know with the city of Bradenton, whenever we bring it up, that what it will do with the strip because it's a limited roadway in there, it scares the daylights out of citizens of the user use, but really the traffic calming works. You just basically got to jump out of the plane and pull the ripcord. But there's a way of doing it, and it's out there, and it's the MPO Scenic Highway, just to include it.
Okay, thank you, sir. So we're going to close discussion, and we'll open public comment just on this specific agenda item. We can do public comment at the end of the meeting for the other items. Is there anyone from the public who would like to come forward to speak on the comprehensive plan? I know it's not the sexiest of issues, is it? But the comprehensive plan and workforce housing. All right. So as you, Glenn, I did think you would sit there. So as you come forward, and I'm sure this frequent flyer knows the rules, you will have 3 minutes. Please state your first and last name and your county of residence, and we're discussing the comprehensive plan specifically. Go ahead, sir.
For the record, Glenn Gibellina, Manatee County. You know what that is? It's the sound of a broken record. So I'm up here singing the same old song. I met with each of you about the things, land trust, land banks, infill lots, development. Actually had some very good meetings with you, so we need to move in the right direction. Height restriction and density. My God, if we were to take every storage locker and make it affordable apartments, we wouldn't have that problem. But they go up 3 stories without a problem. It's unbelievable. Government is slow. It's like a ship turning. You're exactly right. But you got to take the dock lines off the dock lines. It's unbelievable. open for business. We are open for business, but the employees have to come to a recollection that if we take the employees that are above minimum wage and we give them bonuses for that, sit them down in their office and take 30% of their check or 35% of their check and say, all right, go out and get me an apartment. That's what you need to gauge open for business for, because once your employees, I don't care how well you get paid, are spending 40, 50% of their wages, the quality of life goes down. There's no doubt about that. The school board, largest employer of the county, they're terrible. They have not earmarked any land for future workforce housing, and they should. When these developers come in there and give them 10, 15 acres, ask for another 5. Let the food service workers and the custodian and the teachers live by the schools. This is not rocket scientists. They don't get it. The impact fees, they've been flatlined at $6,400 for decades. They don't move an inch. They need to get down with this sliding scale. School district, the mall, get a $200 million, bond it out. Buy it from the guy who's buying it now, if you want to move that. If you want to move that forward. Students, we got 6 colleges in the area, over 60,000 students. We don't have one dormitory. We got USF and the county negotiating for some dormitories. I don't know why that deal went south. That's 9 acres. We've been talking about it for years. Take the property back and build it out. This slow movement between government entities is absolutely crazy. We need to move in the right direction. Infill lots, a home run, and there's a way to do it. CRA is sitting on 8 lots. They need to move on it. We've got surplus property. We need to move on it. Every time you leave a vacant lot vacant, nobody wins. You put an affordable house underneath someone's head, you're benefiting the community. So thank you for my 3-minute rant. This was great. This is a great meeting. I hope we can move in the positive direction. Home ownership is out. Think about rentals. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Glenn Gibolina, for the record.
Thank you for the record. Is there anyone else who would like to come forward? Please state your first and last name, your county of residence, and you'll have 3 minutes to discuss housing and the comp plan.
Thank you. Mark Dunlop, Manatee County. I serve on the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee for the county, and I also serve on a committee with Turning Point. So homelessness and affordable housing are near and dear to me. The comments that were made about government moving slowly, for those of us outside of government, it seems even slower than it does for you inside of government. I understand the hurdles. Also, I have a 22-year-old at home. And my wife and I would love to be empty nesters, but I literally do not know how he's going to afford a house or an apartment or any place reasonable to live. So it's near and dear to my heart for many reasons. I was encouraged by today's meeting. I love the idea. I love the ideas that were shared, the energy, the working together. My plea to you as a citizen is make it happen sooner rather than later. We are losing opportunities for people to come to our community and live and contribute every single day that we don't take action. And it's going to be an all of the above approach. We're going to need to add rooftops. I moved here with my family 25 years ago from the booming metropolis of Tampa because I wanted a simpler place to raise my kids. It's not the same place anymore, and I have to let go of my desire to make growth stop because it's not helping anybody. We really don't have that option. So whatever we can do to add rooftops, I don't think personally that we're going to solve affordability by single-family residents. The cost of construction is simply too high until we solve some serious constraints on the supply chain side. So it's going to take multifamily developments. So we've got to open people's eyes and hearts and minds to multifamily, maybe in their neighborhoods, and they're going to be against it. So we've got to find creative ways to talk about that in ways that don't turn people off, but help them understand that it brings police to their community, it brings firefighters to communities, it brings teachers and people who really need a reasonable, nice, affordable place to live. Thank you for your efforts, and I look forward to what y'all are going to accomplish. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for coming down here. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to come forward to speak? All right, seeing no one, we'll go to the phone. Does METV have anyone on the phone who would like to speak?
There is no one on the phones at this time.
Okay, thank you. So due to a technical difficulty that we're having with METV, we're going to take a quick 10-minute commercial break, and we will resume this meeting, excuse me, at 3:01. We are in recess.
Out the door to the right.
Okay, welcome back. So we've concluded the comp plan. We're going to move into probably be a brief topic, but it's still an important one, downtown connectivity. I think probably the most exciting new downtown connectivity plan going is the water taxi. So I was going to go to Dr. Hopes to bring us up to speed on where we are with a water taxi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, and Council members. The ITN is out on the street. The responses are due next week on the 30th. So we expect to begin negotiations with probable partners by around the middle of April. We've had a number of inquiries. It was noticed to every water taxi operator in the state that we are aware of. So we're expecting a favorable response, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Whitmore.
Very, very quick. From what I understand from our last meeting with Holmes Beach, I don't think they were excited about it, but I know Waterline owns that basin there. That's private property. So maybe that would be a place where it makes sense anyway to have the water taxi, but they weren't supportive at the time. The other two cities are, just so you know.
And Dr. Hopes, the potential landing sites would be?
So the city of Anna Marita Pier, the Bradenton Beach Pier, and then downtown would be the day dock for the city of Bradenton. We would coordinate parking and land transportation, including backup transportation using our transit system in periods of inclement weather so no one gets sort of stuck on the island.
Fantastic. Commissioner Bellamy, and then Sanders.
Oh, okay. So yesterday I had an opportunity to meet with Mayor Tisworth, and I actually did that my tour out there, and I asked that question about the water taxi and as far as potential options in Holmes Beach. I'm not necessarily sure there are many unless it's private property, unless I'm misunderstanding what the message I got yesterday. However, I was wondering, based on we're looking at places of, could Kingfish be an option? Because actually, just looking at that area, and it leads right into the public, Lord help me, the public beach access, not Publix. The public beach access, and I'm just wondering, have we thought about that? Because if that's a potential landing spot, it will give immediate access to a lot of different things. But
Sure. That's my district, so I'll speak on that as a dialogue with you briefly. Kingfish could be used. The county owns it, obviously. But while it might not seem like Kingfish is that far out there, if you're on foot and you're toting, water noodles and kids, it's significantly further from the beach than you might think. It does take you past Publix, though, as you mentioned. But there is a private location very near the library where the marina comes in, right in the middle of town. And the trolley comes. See, the trolley also doesn't stop at Kingfish, but the trolley does stop right there. It's sort of in, as you would say, downtown Holmes Beach. So that is, and it's pretty much closer to the beach than Kingfish would be. So it would be a private option. I guess we're just hoping that sort of the city of Holmes Beach will try and help us communicate with their local property owner and try and help coordinate that.
So I brought that up yesterday in the meeting, and the area that I think you're speaking of is very, very close, and it's very, very tight. It's very tight, and that was a concern. And I know boats go in and they back out just like cars, but that was a concern, as well as potential parking. And they talked about parking and things like that. As far as with right there down at City Hall would be some options. But back to the Kingfish, as far as that quarter mile that the transportation from the spot where you get off all the way to public beach access. It is pretty similar. It's pretty common. And that's what the walk is right now. And I didn't walk it yesterday, but I rode it a couple of times on the four-wheelers just to kind of get a clear understanding. But
They took you around on the four-wheelers?
don't do that, right?
I went out
Kevin?
there. I didn't get to.
Don't do that, Kevin. But the reality of it is they're interested, but they're just looking for places, and Kingfish came up, so.
Okay. Councilman Sanders.
Thank you. I've been working on that project for 4 years, water tax. Yeah, and I had at one time a guy that was willing to do that, but the problem was where you get on the boat and where you get off the boat. And that's still the problem today. And there's a lot of in-between stuff as to, that kind of thing. So with our parking garage, yes, it's a great. Our day dock, not so much so. Good location, but there's a lot of money that would have to be spent to make it good for a water taxi and public safety. And there are probably some rules of waterways of how many people can be there, how many people can be on a boat. It has to be, there's a lot of details that have to be worked out, which concerns me that we're getting the cart in front of the horse, that we're asking for, bids, but we don't know where we're going. I don't know how you can do that without knowing where you're getting on and getting off and how fast you're getting on and getting off. So I've been asking numerous questions over 4 years with a lot of details, and even working with the Bradenton Water Patrol is telling me that it's about a 45-minute run from the only dock, possible dock today is Bradenton Beach, and it's pretty tight to get in and out of there. And the Bradenton Water Patrol told me it's a 45-minute drive one way, and said, I just don't know if people would ride that or not. I said, I guess we could pilot a program to find out. That would be fine, but you wouldn't want to have a lot of money invested in a pilot program. Or I wouldn't, as a city councilman, want to vote for that. And I'd want to know a lot more details before we get too far into this. So, and the Bradenton Beach mayor has told me that they're doing a project in the city streets there that won't be finished till this fall, and that dock is getting some upgrades, and it won't be even started till then. So we're probably looking at next year at the earliest. So that's my take on it. And like I said, there's a lot of permitting, safety issues, how you get there, how you get off, how often it's going to run. Some of that would be something that the water taxi companies would know because they've had experience at it in other locations. But they're not going to know what Bradenton Beach can do or what Bradenton can do, because we can talk it, but we can't. I'm not so sure we can walk it right yet.
Okay. Dr. Hopes, would you like to comment on that before we move on to Barnaby and
Mr.
Whitmore?
Chair. It's actually our transit department that is heading this up, and it is a coordinated project between our transit, our bus and trolley systems, as well as the water taxis. The procurement is an intent to negotiate. It's not a bid. It's your water taxi operators. This is what we're looking for: transportation between probably in the future City of Palmetto, the City of Bradenton, Bradenton Beach, Anna Maria, Holmes Beach, and don't forget we have two nice-sized docks, Coquina South and Coquina North, and it's our expectation that the taxi operators would use their own creativity and innovation and tell us what they think is feasible and doable. The issue of the Kingfish boat ramp is we have a grant to do major modifications and expansions to that. So there will be a period of time when it will have limited accessibility while we're doing this one-year pilot to see how effective it can be, and also to help us determine what level of subsidization would be required on an ongoing basis. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Whitmore.
The devil's in the details. We've been talking about this for years and years. So it can work. We have to be flexible. We could use Kingfish, but we'd have to add a trolley stop at Kingfish, because this is not just for going to the beach. This is for people going to the island, going out to dinner and stuff, and I'm not walking in high heels or whatever to, to get somewhere to the trolley stop, and it isn't going to happen. Going to have to charge for it so somebody can make money off of it. The Pete Renard's Basin or Waterline Basin that you're talking about, that is private property there. The submerged lands is owned by that business. Somebody would have to pay them to let us use that. That's great economic for downtown Holmes Beach. Anna Maria is getting close to, when they built their pier, there was an agreement that they would have a launching thing. That is kind of their downtown, as you all know, Pine Avenue. But we got to think about the shifts and all that. It's in the details. This is the furthest we've gotten in a long time. But we all got to be flexible. And, it's all about congestion management. For somebody that lives out there for over 50 years, sitting in line, when I lived there for 45 minutes just to get on the island or longer, but I know how to go the back ways to go through Palmasola and get to the causeway faster. And I'm not going to say it publicly. But but what I'm saying is this is all detailed. This is all planning. You're right. Your city hasn't found maybe a place yet, but it's great for your economic development in downtown and your village of the arts, all that. We just got to think ahead. And this is, again, is the furthest we've ever been. So let's keep it moving.
Thank
So
you.
the order of the board is Van Ostenbridge, Barnaby, Sanders. I'm not sure what the Bradenton Water Patrol is. I've never heard of that. But apparently you've been communicating with them. It seems like the day dock downtown is perfect. It's very near the parking garage that your city just put a major investment into. We have transit lines running downtown. It's a dense area, a dense corridor. You have a direct shot out to a channel, navigable waters all the way out there. And some retrofitting has to be done to the day dock itself, but we can do that with TDC funds. It ultimately wouldn't, cost the city. See, I mentioned TDC funds, and Commissioner Servia is picking up her card. Spending your money for you, Commissioner Servia. So it's a very viable option. I think it's our best option. It also, if people want to come from the island to downtown, I think the city of Bradenton benefits as well economically from so many tourists being on the island who may want to come visit downtown Bradenton. So that seems like the absolutely perfect option. I used to live and work in a city of, again, 900 people and 3,000 seasonal workers, but we also brought in anywhere from 10 to 15,000 tourists disembarking every day off of cruise ships, and we managed to make it work. So I think you can certainly manage to make it work there in downtown Bradenton. Councilwoman Barnaby, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And in segueing into downtown connectivity, we also want to let everyone know that we have been working on trying to figure out innovative ways to assist people from getting from LECOM through the Village of the Arts, downtown, to the Riverwalk, and the expansion of the Riverwalk, which is going to go all the way to when I was growing up, it was Old Manatee. It was the town of Manatee that was annexed into the city in the 40s. Walkways, electric scooters, electric bike rentals, that sort of thing. We are working on that. I know that I believe tomorrow we've got a couple of suppliers coming in to work with the committee to show them the products that they have that we might be using and setting up in the downtown for rental assistance with the scooters and the bikes and that sort of thing. So that's on our plan. That's what we're working on right now. And so you will be seeing that roll out pretty quickly, I would think.
Fantastic. I think it's exactly what downtown needs. Councilman Sanders.
Yeah, I don't want to be, water tax is a great idea. It has been discussed for 20 years. And the MPO plan is 2005. I have it, and I read it multiple times. It's a great idea. But to make it happen, like Ms. Whitmore said, it's the devil's in the details. And there is a lot of details that I just felt personally that we should be working those out first, because you're just going to be, excitement for nothing if you don't get to those details early on, because maybe some of the details can be worked out. That was my hope, that we would do that, to vet it just a little bit more, because I know that we don't want to put a lot of money in it. We might want to put some money into a pilot program. If you can do a pilot program inexpensively to test it. But then again, I don't know the regulations on the waterway and that kind of stuff, and I don't think we've ever had that here, and that may be part of your transportation, but I think there might be some different rules, and I'm not going to get into a lot of details on that, because that's kind of it. I'm concerned that we haven't vetted the details enough for that.
Okay, thank you, sir. Commissioner, do you need to go right now, sir? Servia, Coker, Mr. Clegg, the county attorney. Commissioner Servia.
Oh, you sure you don't want the attorney to go first, huh?
Yeah, let's hear from him before we say something out of line. Mr. County Attorney, the
All
floor
right.
is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We had a conversation about the water taxi at the last Council of Governments meeting, I believe, and we talked about it quite a bit. And I sat quietly, and then afterwards I cornered a staff person and said, are you guys looking at this from a regulatory standpoint for ADA purposes, NTSB, FTA? And I have been assured that we have, and that has been covered in detail. So I wouldn't imagine we would put it on the streets if we hadn't done that due diligence. That's all I have, sir.
We're putting it on the water, but I know what you mean.
And I might note, when I brought this up, Mr. Clegg pulled out a very detailed memorandum that he wrote in, 2015 maybe? Yeah, so he actually studied it some time ago from a legal perspective as well.
You all do a great job, and that we're sort of at 100,000 foot elevation here, and so we sort of put the ideas out, and then staff is tasked with ironing out the details for us. Commissioner Servia.
Yes, thank you very much. And you're correct. The devil is in the details always, Councilman Sanders. So your point is well taken. This is a pilot project. That is how we've presented it. I believe you're right, that it's a one-year pilot project. And yes, TDC money is available for this pilot project because it is going to benefit our tourists who visit here. The thing that I keep saying, and this is probably the third or fourth time I've said it, and I'll say it with my city council friends, is I hope that you can get with your merchants in downtown Bradenton and make sure ahead of time that they are pleased and happy with the direction we're going. Because what we don't want is for anyone to be unhappy that this could jeopardize or impact their business in a negative way. We don't intend to do that, and I'm confident it probably won't happen, but let's get in front of that bus and make sure everybody's happy.
Thank you, Commissioner. Councilwoman Coker.
Yeah, I just wanted to weigh in that I understand, yes, there's a lot of details that'll have to be worked through, but I think it's a great idea. I'm definitely in favor of it. Really want to work through those details. So I don't want you to think that, I know for myself, I'm definitely in favor of it. I think it'll do nothing but help our merchants downtown. And people that come for our beaches are going to say, hey, let's spend the day downtown in Bradenton or on the Riverwalk, or, oh, I can't get a hotel out on the island, but I can get one in downtown Bradenton and still go to the beach. So I just wanted to give my support.
Thank you, ma'am. Commissioner Servia, you want to close this?
Yeah, just a little bit of dialogue back and forth, and sure, I'll close it.
Absolutely.
And the thing that I always think about is parking, right? So if we have people coming downtown to hop on the ferry, which I'll be first in line, I can't wait. Where are we going to park? Or hopefully the parking garage where there's plenty of parking. But what we don't want are that people are going to pull into Pier 22 and start taking all their parking because it happens to be closer to where the boarding is. You know what I mean? And that's just an example. Or on Main Street where Favs can't get their customers in because we have people parked there for the ferry. So that's just a minor detail. We can work through that, but I just think we need to think about those kinds of things up front.
Yeah, good idea.
Just in response to that parking garage has all kinds of stuff that's coming at it, and I'm not so sure we aren't over promising for what spaces we have. The first level is dedicated to the Marriott Hotel, so there's 2 more levels. Now it's dedicated to city vehicles and city employees, and then we also have some arm's length agreement with another 12-story development downtown that the county owned the building and sold the building to the local developer. So I want to make sure that we don't over promise that garage to somebody going out to the beach, and then now we've created another problem for us.
Okay, thank you, sir. So we'll close out downtown connectivity then, and let's move into publicly held downtown properties, which should be a more exciting discussion. I think the properties that we're looking at particularly are old City Hall that the county owns, new City Hall or current City Hall that you guys own, the Judicial Center. So if the county attorney would like to start with an update on the lawsuit involving the Judicial Center, and then perhaps segue into a quick synopsis on the old City Hall property on Wares Creek that the county currently owns. Mr. County Attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. DiCarlo, do you mind just coming up? So this is our chief litigator, Chris DiCarlo, who has been handling this case. The building was completed in 2009. I'm sure most of us here were here when it was built. And in 2019, we discovered a defect in the construction that resulted in pieces of the building falling off and landing on the sidewalk. So the scaffolding that you see there is to protect pedestrians on the sidewalk from being hit by fallen debris, which obviously could be very dangerous. And that protects us both, the county and the city. We own the building, and they're your sidewalks. We filed the case in 2019, April of 2019. So we've been litigating for almost 3 years. The scaffolding, my recollection is it went up sometime around the time that we filed the case. So it's been there for about 3 years. These are challenging claims. Construction litigation is hard. It's time consuming. It's particularly difficult when there was a pandemic and the courthouse basically shut down for extended periods of time. The good news is we have a settlement agreement that we believe we're going to be bringing to the board at the April 12th meeting. It's out for signature. It's essentially final. And with that, I will ask Mr. DiCarlo to walk us through the details of that settlement.
Thank you, Mr. Clegg. Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, council members, again, my name is Chris DiCarlo for the record. I'm the Assistant County Attorney who's managing the county's litigation regarding the Judicial Center. To piggyback off of what Mr. Clegg said, again, the scaffolding was put in place predominantly as a safety precaution, given the nature of the construction defects that we were dealing with, which we were concerned about. They predominantly relate to what we refer to as the APC, or architectural precast panels. That's essentially the concrete cladding and panels that you see on the outside of the Judicial Center. They're in two forms. They have solid face on the area that constitutes the cooling tower. And then the second section of them are panels that have brick inlay that are basically around the remainder of the building on the north, east, and south-facing sections of the Judicial Center. So the county did file a lawsuit. We became aware of these defects and filed a lawsuit against the general contractor who was responsible for constructing the Judicial Center. That was a piece of property that we received a final certificate of occupancy on in May of 2009. We started shortly before the 2019 timeframe, basically discovering pieces of the panels falling off the building. We were finding them on the sidewalk. We were finding them on adjacent and overhanging roofs that were adjacent to portions of the building. And so obviously our concern was protecting the public, both the pedestrian and vehicular traffic, given the proximity of where people are walking in connection to the building and the amount of traffic that goes into and out of that building on a day-to-day basis. We filed the lawsuit, as I mentioned, against the general contractor. The general contractor filed in turn what is referred to in legal terms as a third-party complaint, bringing in the subcontractor into the lawsuit. That subcontractor was the contractor that actually manufactured those panels and installed them. Now, just to be clear, for purposes of our discussion here, the general contractor and the subcontractor do, as you probably could imagine, dispute the county's claims, but and that's very common in litigation, as you probably know. But frankly, we've worked well with them, and from our perspective, they've stepped up and done a good job in trying to reach an agreement with us to remedy these defects. So what they did was they hired a very reputable national firm, engineering firm out of Chicago, to perform an analysis of these defects and come up with a remediation plan. as you can imagine, all of that was slowed to some degree significantly by the pandemic, largely because of access issues to the building, largely because we had people, frankly, coming from out of state, both some of our experts who are traveling from out of state, as well as the experts for the engineering firm who were coming down from Chicago to analyze the building. And as we all know, we had issues with travel during that period of time. So that really slowed down the process a little bit more, I think, than what we would have liked. But as Mr. Clegg mentioned, all of this has culminated in a settlement agreement, which is out to the general contractor and the subcontractor. We expect to have that back shortly, and it is our hope and expectation that we will be able to put a signed version of that agreement that is signed by the general and the subcontractor in front of the board for consideration at your April 12th meeting. So there's just a couple of key timeframes that are associated with that I want to make you aware of. So that settlement agreement, if the board was to approve it, would contemplate that within 7 days after the board executing the agreement, then the subcontractor would be required to submit an application for building permit. That would, of course, come to the city for construction and the remediation of those construction defects. And then within 14 days after the issuance of that building permit, then they would be required to commence their repair work on the building. There is a provision in the settlement agreement that contemplates that the subcontractor, will take over the management of the scaffolding that is around the building. That's obviously something that's necessary for them for it to remain up during the process of the remediation. The settlement agreement contemplates that they will complete the construction and the remediation within 4 to 6 months after the receipt of the building permit and the commencement of the work. And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, sir. The order of the board is Roth and Commissioners Baugh and Whitmore. She's on Zoom.
On the phone.
She and the mayor are on Zoom. Did you all want to speak specifically to this property?
No, actually, we moved on, and I just wanted to bring something up. We don't have to really get into it in detail, but under downtown on connectivity, 26th Street has been a problem for wards 2 and 3 forever because it's a county road.
Sure.
But everyone thinks it's a city road, so we're.
That's what I tell them.
And that's what they believe anyway. But we run into a quagmire of how do we work together to solve a problem that is, there's many issues, including maintenance. I mean, we work hard on our roads, and then we run into the county road, but basically also there's, as you might be aware, there's a real problem of the 2-lane going into a 4-lane going into Manatee Avenue, and we're not going to solve it today, but I wanted to bring that up.
No, I have discussed it. It's in my district, and I have discussed it with Public Works, and I was essentially informed that the amount of right-of-way acquisition involved in that makes it essentially an impossible task to 4-lane that, and it's a failed section of road. So we did move it up the rotation and the paving rotation. Mm-hmm. So between 9th and 17th, that section, which was the rougher area, has been resurfaced. But outside of that, there are no plans for 26th Street at this time.
Okay. And then excuse me, everyone, I have to go. I have an appointment with my wife.
Okay, thank you, sir. Commissioner Baugh, you can unmute yourself.
Can you guys hear me okay?
We hear you loud and clear, ma'am.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't get in the conversation when we were talking about affordable housing, but I look forward to the next meeting on that. In reference to, I've got to go back. I'm sorry, I couldn't get anyone's attention. I apologize. But going back to talking about the water taxi and so forth, interesting conversation, I thought, particularly about Pier 22 and other areas not wanting to lose their parking spaces. And I will tell you that I know the logistics is being looked at and handled by staff, and I'm sure it'll be a joint effort between Manatee County and the city of Bradenton. I just wanted to say that this plan about the taxi, I can tell you, we threw it out there several times over the years. And finally this year, Dr. Hopes and staff, has brought it forward. So it is a pilot program. I think it's going to be great. I think I'm really looking forward to seeing how it does. And it might take a little bit longer than a year to catch on. But I know that up in Tampa and St. Pete, they're really having some great success. So I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Whitmore? No? Okay. Then if no one else is on the board, Councilwoman Coker is on the board.
Well, just back to the publicly held downtown. One other I'd like to put out there is the library. I know that was quite a while ago. There was discussion about relocating it, and I just wanted to kind of see where we were with that.
So it was discussed between Commissioner Cruz and myself, the possibility of relocating the library off of the waterfront in an effort to maximize the potential of the downtown waterfront. I see Commissioner Whitmore is on the board, and I'm sure Commissioner Cruz is going to follow. So Commissioners Whitmore and Cruz.
No, I wanted to talk about 17th, so I'll wait.
Okay, Commissioner Cruz, do you want to discuss the library?
Yeah, it came up in one of our meetings when we were kind of discussing various things, and it sounded like the chairman and I were somewhat on the same page for the discussion. I think it came up, I don't remember the context, but shortly after you all started the report on City Hall. And I had commented that we massively underutilize our waterfront on both sides of the river. When you compare it to other places like downtown St. Pete that has cafes and things all on their water, and you've got downtown Tampa doing Water Street, and downtown Sarasota with the Quay and the Ritz and the New Bay project. And we've got a city hall, a county library, a hospital, and a retirement home. It's our waterfront, the most valuable property we have, and where in theory should be the highest height restriction we've got. So the comment stemmed from basically saying, if there's an opportunity to start opening up this waterfront with the city hall and so on and so forth, that I said, this is something the county needs to look at, because we need to help facilitate better developing and utilizing the waterfront, because a library can be built any place. We're building one right now out in East County. So, that's all I had said. That wasn't something that came up for a vote or a meaningful discussion, more just a observation that the waterfront needs to be better utilized, and that library is taking up a large, valuable piece of land.
Yeah, so ma'am, the library sits on 3 acres. If you were to add the other county property that's downtown waterfront, which would be the old City Hall property, which I would like to get to next with the county attorney, that's, I believe, 4.5 acres. So we're sitting on over 7 acres of waterfront property downtown that is not on the tax roll. It's not an economic generator for our community. And of course, the city is trying to put sort of heads in beds and increase, residency downtown. I think these are 2 properties that, should be put back into private hands, in my opinion. And we could certainly relocate the library. I'm not looking to close libraries. I'm saying we could relocate the library. I think that's a good option. Library? No. Is there any other comments on the library then? Okay. So Whitmore, you're next, and then Sanders.
What I wanted
Yes,
to
ma'am.
talk about? Okay. I've met with all commissioners individually, except for Patrick Roth, but I did talk to him on the phone. And it's regarding actually my observations and many, and watching your meetings about the issues we're having on 9th and 17th, where LECOM is, and the homeless issue. And I think what brought it kind of to my attention was when I was talking to Pam, and she was saying Darwin's. Was it Darwin's? They closed because of the homeless situation. So I drove by there a few times, and I can see the problem. I actually worked at Turning Points with my husband for about 5 years. Every week or every month, we'd go a couple times a month and do surgery on patients. So I get it. Plus, I still go down there. So I totally understand. And I asked the county administrator, and I went around the county and looked for property that maybe we could look at doing some kind of transitional housing to get I'm thinking our Manatee County residents off the streets, especially with all this stuff started dominoing. So we looked all over the county. We got to 17th down the street where your sewer plant is. And I've shown you all personally, so you know exactly where I'm talking about. And that's what handles also your reclaimed water for Liquid Ranch, from what I understand. So it had everything in it. It had a gigantic 3,300 square foot building, and actually it was completely gutted. And I showed most of you, since I think you've been there, it's been gutted. Totally gutted, and there's another piece of property there. It's literally next door to the the sewer treatment plant. It's behind that is a juvenile detention center. And it was like, how are we ever going to build anything there that who wants to live next to a sewer plant or who wants to live next to the juvenile center? So I showed you all personally. I also took Senator Galvano down there since he actually helped with Turning Points. I don't think Carol Whitmore voted for Turning Points. I think it maybe when I first came in office it opened, but that was in the city of Bradenton.
We had to approve it.
Yeah, the city approved it. So I'm a problem solver, and I was trying to think of a way to help the city of Bradenton help them with their problem on property that we had that we could actually maybe utilize better. The mayor I took down also. And it could be a planned development where we could decrease our setbacks. I know there's a reverter clause on the property we donated to you to expand your treatment plant. You haven't done that yet, but doesn't mean that you still couldn't, but maybe our setbacks would be a little closer. And in my vision, and this is just my vision because we don't know, and this would never be government running this would be a nonprofit. Manatee County has a very valuable piece of land that could help everyone. We've also got sewer water transit. This would also complement Turning Points, and this would hopefully direct your homeless population down to this transitional housing. And whatever organization took over, it would be very strict. I heard after I left the meeting that day that it didn't go as good as I thought. But I'm still not going to give up because what are we going to do with that land? As you know, we're doing housing for the homeless veterans. Possibly, I think that's next we're going to talk about. I also heard there's a citizen in Manatee County that's actually purchasing a piece of property or is investing his own funds over $1 million or $1 million on transitional housing. You also have, once you get out of transitional, you got to have a place to go to rent. And I know that is the crisis right now. So I wanted to bring that up today because I heard that maybe you all weren't as in love with me at your meeting as you were the day I met with you in person. And I'm asking you to please have an open mind and look at this. I am not trying, Carol Whitmore or the county is not trying to dump anything on you. We're trying to help you solve a problem that you have, which is a place that I absolutely love is the Pittsburgh Pirates field, LECOM. How can we do that? Because I know you're going to do a roundabout there and you're going to revitalize down 9th. We had homeless issues on 14th, and now they're on 9th. Just trying to come up with a creative idea. If I do something, I'm going to do it right. And I talk to all kinds of people, tiny 120 square foot apartment, heavy on case management, work with Turning Points. This could be a win-win for everybody because I don't think your homeless are going to go away because of where Turning Points is. Not looking to expand Turning Points. I'm looking to something to deal with the homeless. That's all I'm going to say now. I'm not going to give up, so I will keep, poor Pammy, I'm going to keep looking into this, and maybe somebody will come from out there and come up with something creative to show all of us. This is just Carol thinking in her head. I've worked with homeless for years. When I was young, I was homeless, but I had a great structure on the island. But I know that if you're heavy on case management or, a navigator to help you navigate through that, once you get your teeth fixed, you get clean clothes, your health is better, you address some of your mental health issues. Everybody has a little bit of mental health issues. Once you get that all stabilized, at least you may be prepared to go out in the workforce. And that's my thoughts, being in medical for so many years. Anyway, I wanted to bring that up, and that's all for now.
Very, very well said, Commissioner. Thank you. Councilman Sanders, you're next.
Yes, Ms. Whitmore, and once you get all those problems solved, you can run for city council or county commissioner.
I've already been a city council person and a county commissioner.
I know
and a
that.
mayor.
And a mayor. You've done, it's about, she's been in government for a long time. I'm not sure that's something.
It was the hat trick.
Okay. A comment I have about that property I met with you, I think it's a good idea because I know our sewer plant's not going anywhere. And I do have a question, and maybe our public works director, I notice, is here, because of the lawsuit that we're involved in with sewage going into the Manatee River. We're now going to build an aquifer to put it in, or build a
deep well?
filtration unit that goes into the aquifer. And I don't know if that property beside it that you're talking about, that you want us to revert back, I'll ask Mr. McClellan real fast if that would affect that would be, or affect any possible plans, because we're putting like $8 million into that real soon.
So, sir, please state your first and last name for the record.
Jim McClellan, Director of Public Works and Utilities for the City of Bradenton. The property in question it is planned as a future location for a third oxidation ditch for our wastewater treatment plant. In the interim, as part of an injection well for our reclaimed water, that site is intended to have at least one monitoring well associated with it, not the well itself. The injection well is intended to be placed on the existing property of the treatment plant. But the limitation from our standpoint is something built permanently on that property would have a significant restriction on our flexibility to be able to respond to future needs associated with wastewater treatment for the city.
That's why we're here today, because we would work with you so we wouldn't interfere.
Understood.
Okay.
And I have provided graphics to our city administrator that show what the proposed layout of a third oxidation dish would look like on that site. So if you wanted to work around that, okay.
All right, devil's in the details, right? Okay, so one last comment on the old City Hall property. It's been there for a long time, vacant, and there's enormous amount of money, I think, involved in order for the city, or for the county, to do anything with it. Am I hearing you're making a commitment today to do that?
We'll hear about that from the county attorney in just a minute. He'll brief us on that.
It's a legal issue?
Well, yes.
Yes, I know, but there's a buyout in that, isn't there?
Listen, the county attorney speaks on these matters. I don't make statements like that.
Okay, I wasn't aware of that, sorry.
Okay.
So
That's okay.
I'd like that to be addressed.
We pay him a lot of money.
Because that is the biggest opportunity.
We pay him a lot of money, and we hide behind his dress at every opportunity. So
Well,
we let him go right out front.
It's time to start.
We let him get right out front on these things.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Well, before we do that, though, Mr. Perry is on a time crunch, so I wanted to go to get an update on the current City Hall property so that we can release him. Mr. Perry, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hopefully I'm picking that up. Commissioners, councilors, Rob Perry, City Administrator, City of Bradenton. When I first came in, I guess about 9 months ago, I was somewhat tasked with continuing a space study, to begin actually a space study for existing City Hall. The police side as well as the administrative side, you're all pretty familiar with the historical precept of us purchasing the land, building it in 1995, putting it on our books in 2000, and being in it for about the last 20 years or so. It by most cases has been deemed obsolete, both from size, functionality, programmatics, and the like. And to that extent, the space study was returned. I was also authorized to obtain an appraisal of the value of the 3.9 acres that encompasses the City Hall footprint, being the surface parking lot and the structure itself and surrounding landscape surrounds. That appraisal was done by someone within the state of Florida that has experience with waterfront appraisals. Very unique, obviously, the property itself. It's a large assemblage. There isn't many of them, really, in the entirety of the state. And there's a couple different ways to do appraisals. They did this one on a comp basis, basically, comparables. It's tough to compare apples with oranges from Jacksonville or Venice and down the South Gulf area and the like. But generally speaking, it came in over 8 figures. And presently, that's where we're at on that. In the interim, I've received 2 unsolicited offers for the property. And that's not uncommon. That happens. I enlisted an attorney with familiarity, expertise, subject matter expertise in handling what are kind of characterized generically as unsolicited offers or public-private partnerships. As a state statute on point, and that attorney reviewed how we would have to proceed with any sort of disposition of the property. In short, it would require us to do a public notification and allow individuals basically to consider purchase of the property. It would be a considered disposition. There's no commitment by the city that it would in fact sell the property. And it would basically take any and all offers that came in, and as the governing body, set the policy of how they would want to proceed next. Since that time, I've received another verbal offer of interest from a qualified, what I consider qualified development group. And so I will be proceeding with taking this matter to council on the April agenda. I'm not sure if it'll be on the 13th or the second meeting to consider as far as how they wish to proceed with the next step. And the next step is, if you have the appraisal, so you have a pretty good idea of valuation, you have needs for where we're at, we have 2 current offers. We can just say, we're not interested at all. We can say, open it up and look at the offers after they're submitted, and we'll evaluate and the like. So that's where we're at. Again, both offers are in excess of 8 figures.
That's big news.
It is big news, and I've been trying to handle it very incrementally as a matter of proper process, vetting it at each step with legal review, with financial review and the like. And I've just kind of gotten to the point with council actually this week, so it's pretty fresh news too.
So I just have one quick question, and then Commissioner Bellamy is first on the board. I guess this would be up to the council, to your governing body anyway, but I'll let Commissioner Bellamy go. My question when we get back to council members would be, is there any specifics, like, sort of like deed restrictions, as Commissioner Cruz had stated earlier, are there any specifics that you're tying to the development of the property once sold? We don't want a storage unit, for instance.
It's an excellent. Yeah, well, at least someone does, right? It's an excellent question, and I keep always hearing the term. I'm not in favor of growth. I'm in favor of smart growth. What does smart growth mean? To me, as a government official, it's controlled growth. It's controlling the ability to use the property for its highest, best beneficial use as a matter of policy. That is permissible to put in there as the consideration of disposition. You could put provisions in there. Ultimately, you can put them in at any other time thereafter, through a deed restriction, master development agreement, or a whole host of different legal vehicles to do it, I would think.
Okay. All right, thank you, sir. So Bellamy and Cruz is the order of the board.
Right, and Commissioner Cruz probably wants to make a comment on that, and I want to just open up the discussion about the Judicial Center and becoming, for the veterans wraparound services. And I spoke with an individual this morning that I had not spoken with, and I have not spoken to anybody representing the city of Bradenton about potential concerns. I've heard that people have some concerns and do not want homeless people downtown the city of Bradenton. But I think all of us on the same page with that. None of us want that. The intent is to have a strict, regimented, place to make sure we impact. Yeah, just like the military. They're used to doing what they're told and going. Now, we do know all places have challenges, but my intent was to hold this conversation with everybody at the table. So whatever the concerns are, we could put those safeguards and those protocols in place so we can find a way to continue down this road and, make sure we put a win-win project together. Unfortunately, I have a 4 o'clock hard stop because I have to be somewhere. But I just wanted to make sure we had that communication out there. If there were some concerns, I'm sure staff is listening. I'm sure the county administrator is listening. Let's hear those concerns so we can make sure as we move forward. One of the other things that came up was, we can't do this with the $15 million that we already have. Some people feel like we can. Some people feel like that we can't. But the reality of it is we do plan on making sure we lobby to get some more funds federally and from the state. So we're excited about that, and the intent and the vision is to put a model, so we can make sure that we give other counties, other states, some ideas on what they need to do to make sure they address their homeless veterans with wraparound service and possibly transit houses. So I just wanted to hold that communication because I want to hear what the concerns are, so staff can hear the concerns, so we can make sure we continue to move forward and have everybody at the table for discussion.
Okay, thank you, sir. So we sort of have two things going. I can put you on the board, ma'am. The order of the board is Cruz, Sanders, Baugh, Coker. Commissioner Cruz.
I just had more of a quick question back over here, because you said, I know they're unsolicited offers, so you haven't planned for it and preset it, but your potential sale, or the city of Bradenton's potential sale of that property is kind of setting the comp for the rest of that waterfront property. You're seeing smart growth, controlled growth, so on and so forth, but just like we talked about with the mall, sometimes you have to find certain areas that just require basically putting your best foot forward, going for the max that you can get there, because that is waterfront property. And it's going to command high values. It's going to have high demand in terms of residences, and however you use it. Have you all spoken, and I don't know who's best to answer this, and maybe the answer is no, doing what we talked about with the mall, going in right now and considering rezoning that parcel before you get more unsolicited offers, before you accept an unsolicited offer, start looking at, hey, downtown Sarasota has, I believe, 18 stories on their waterfront. Have you gone in and said, okay, here's the height we'll allow for this stretch along the water here, here's the density we'll allow, before you go out and get those unsolicited offers, because whoever is going to buy it is going to factor in going through that process, and being able to buy something that's already as of right makes it that much more certain and therefore that much more valuable. So has that been discussed, and this is open to anyone, been discussed ahead of time, or are you still kind of in the planning stages and you're just saying two people called you on the phone over the weekend and offered you money?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Cruz, we're not that far deep down into looking at the possibility of rezoning. And I would probably defer to Ms. Singer and Planning Department to go through the nuances of the land development restrictions that are in place, as well as the zoning at this time. I can tell you that the offers are formalized offers. It isn't somebody just calling up. They're very detailed offers. Yep.
I wasn't implying that. I just wasn't sure if you had all gotten to the stage where you start saying, okay, well, let's figure out what the maximum best use of this strip of land along the water is. Let's get this pre-rezoned to create the most value, the most demand for that property,
Right.
before you put it out.
No, we haven't done that yet. Yep.
Yeah, because the rezone will raise, I'm getting into talking like a realtor now, but the rezone, of course, once you've done that and you rezone it to the maximum, potential use, then that's going to raise your value. And it'll help us too, absolutely, by raising the value of our waterfront property. Sanders, Baugh, Coker. Councilman Sanders.
My favorite topic, selling City Hall. That was built in like 1998, and every councilman and mayor lost their seat over building it downtown. That was the primary reason. There was thousands of people showed up in protest. They did it anyway, and so they lost their job. I've heard comments that building cost us between $10 and $13 million in 1998. Well, I don't know what the record is, but Bradenton Herald reported it 9 point something. The past councilman, Jeff Carmen, which was in my seat in that time period, said 13 million. So I don't know. We can get a public record on it. I don't think that matters, except for the comment I'm having is that if we put 10 million in it, and we're only getting 10 million now, something's wrong with that process, because I've bought a lot of property in my life and I've never sold it 25 years later for only what I had in it. And so that really concerns me, that process needs a little more detailed work done before it's actually, if we want to sell it discounted, fine. But here's the problem. We have to build a $20 million police department. And we have to, what are we going to do with city employees? Where am I going to sit? Joke. Another 10 million. So we're going to spend 30 million to get 10 million. And don't tell me we're going to get some taxes back. I don't know if we are or not. Heck, we might waive that because it's in the CRA, and you know the CRA has to approve this. It's in, so that's another thing I didn't realize that was happening. So again, personally, I and the city administrator disagree on this, obviously. And I think we got the cart before the horse. I think there's a lot of devil in the details that we've got to work out first so we know what we're getting into. And we shouldn't be out making offers on this until we know those things. Because what if would we accept an offer for less than what we're going to have to expend to repurpose other properties? And we just don't have no idea yet. And again, I'm a person that likes to plan. I like to know if I got money in the bank. I like to know before I buy a car that I've vetted it and it's a price. It's what we should do. Now I know that's not a government that does things that way, and so I'm pretty. But I've never been in government until now, so maybe that's how it works. You buy things and sell them for less than what you got in them, and then go out and buy. But that's not taxpayer friendly.
Mr. Chairman, I have.
Would you like to dialogue, Marion, or Councilwoman Barnaby?
we-
You have your microphone on?
But wait a minute, am I not speaking?
I'm giving her
I didn't
permission
ask
to-
no question.
I'm just giving her permission to
Point of
dialogue.
order. Point of order.
Point of order's
I
been
think
called.
we're getting way into things that we should not be doing at this meeting. This is something that the council and mayor need to discuss. I don't think we need to be airing this at this point in time. And we have other topics that we need to cover before we're here until 7 o'clock tonight.
Well, I'm sorry, but I got all day. But I understand the commitment there to 4:30. But these are things the public's watching.
And
They
we
need
are
to know
going
that.
to be
Mrs.
discussing
Barnaby,
these. We will be discussing
Please, if
them.
you have a problem with that, you can take it up with somebody else. Okay, I'm done on that. I'm done on that. But I'll let.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Baugh, Coker, and Servia. Commissioner Baugh.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, Commission.
Oh, you're breaking up a little bit. You must be in Lakewood Ranch.
I'm not in Lakewood Ranch, actually, but it has been breaking up on me, so I apologize.
Okay,
Are you able to hear me now?
Yes, ma'am. It's clear. And anytime you ask, can you hear me now, it's always fixed. Go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to say I think that the Board of Council involved in any negotiating of your waterfront property with City Hall. So I think Marianne is right. We need to move on. If we are now discussing, I heard it brought up, the veterans, are we not, Mr. Chair?
Yes, ma'am. You're free to discuss that. You're still in a little bit of a breaking up issue, so anything you can do to help with that, but that is on the table to discuss. Go ahead.
Okay, I wish there was something I could do. I think it is. But I would say that I know a lot of us are not in favor of building the veterans facility there, the old jail. And the reason is because, there's a place on 64 that would be perfect, that's already built. It's never been used. It's sitting there vacant. I was talking to about it yesterday. There would be more than enough room for housing veterans and also bringing in the other agencies and medical people in that regard too. I just wanted to bring that up. That's something that perhaps we need to look at instead of just, holding ourselves on the old jail. And the other thing that I would add, and then I'll be done, is that if the city of Bradenton is really against building the veterans there, then maybe this would be willing to help us do a demo of the old jail, and then we could turn it. So that's it for me.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. So taking Coker off of the board, I have Servia, I think Barnaby and Whitmore.
You can
Commissioners,
take me off the board.
Taking Servia off the board. Barnaby's not here. Commissioner Whitmore, you've jumped right to the front of the line.
The building that Commissioner Ball is talking about, I actually know the doctor very well.
I love that email.
Commissioner,
Can you turn off?
Commissioner
Can
Ball,
you please turn off your speaker? We just heard you.
just please mute yourself.
Anyway, so the facility that Commissioner Ball is talking about, and I had talked to our county administrator about it. Dr. Rajan built it years ago, and with another Indian physician, and long time happened. They ran out of money, and then the partner, passed away in India. And so she had met with me a couple times because now it doesn't meet building codes. So you'd have to almost completely demolish it again. I mean, it can be done, but I just want you to know I know that property well because I've had to have her come and meet with our county staff, and it does not meet current building codes. It was going to be a medical office complex. That's the only thing that, she did say that was correct. And it could be used, she's correct, but it's going to cost money, and that sounds like that would come from us. We have a jail that we wanted to do affordable housing for our young employees or anybody in the county, somebody that wanted a flat, a very small space. And the sheriff at the time and the clerk of the court did not want that. But from what I've heard, they were okay with homeless vets. So, and that's the first time I had heard that Commissioner Baugh didn't support this. So I don't know if she does or doesn't, but, everything we need to look at. And remember, it's a retired or it's a homeless veteran who's used to living in structure. And a lot of times that's why they are where they are now. So anyway, just food for thought.
Commissioner Servia.
Wow, that was quick. I was next up. Okay. So are we out of order? No. Okay.
She left the room. I skipped her in the rotation.
Okay. So on the topic of the Veterans Center, and I'll just say this for the benefit of the city council people who are here, because my county commissioner colleagues have heard me say this. There's no veteran that should be without housing. We all agree with that. Absolutely 100%. In Manatee County, the census is 74 homeless veterans. That's the people that we are targeting today to provide housing for. We have a facility across the street that can handle way more than that number. And if we develop it into a veterans housing facility for homeless veterans, they will come. And so I want to make sure that that is federally funded to operate it, if that's what happens, so that our local tax dollars are not paying to run an operation that's going to be calling veterans from all over the country, number one. Number two, those wraparound services are going to be essential because the plan, as we've all discussed, is going to be to bring them in, to help them, and to move them out, right? And then we have to know what the next step is. Where will they move to? And so perhaps part of that center could be permanent housing for the veterans. We haven't really talked through those details. And to the city council people here, we understand that you don't want, we all envision the worst case scenario would be something like lots of people gathering outside with their tent materials. That is not what I have in mind for that facility, and I don't think my colleagues do either. So it would be, everything would be happening inside. It would be controlled so that would not be happening. And I just speak for myself and what I envision, but I believe that my colleagues probably feel the same. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'm going to weigh in on that. So I agree with a lot of what you said. 74 homeless vets, $15 million. If you do the math, we're spending an awful lot of money per veteran. Secondly, I do worry that there will be an influx of people from out of town who will come to Manatee County looking for services, and that sort of no good intention, right? No good deed goes unpunished. Here, our county is kind-hearted and big-hearted and trying to do the best they can by their veterans, but as a result, we could end up being punished by so many from out of town. This big influx moving in. And that would become a burden on Manatee County taxpayers, an undue burden that we would have created. And so I am cautioned by that. And I do hear from people downtown, property owners, and just citizens who frequent downtown, that they are concerned about what impact that would have on downtown. So I'm starting to sort of caution myself before I go full steam ahead in support of this. I do agree that no veterans should spend a night on the streets as well. But I would like for the county administrator and for Lee Washington to sort of bring us options. I think that's what I'm looking for, is options. I want the same objective that you do, but I think we should be given some options before we move forward. So I have Coker and Sanders on the board. Councilwoman Coker.
I guess my question, it was a question, and I was going to ask Reggie. Is it just housing, or are you going to be providing services as well, other veteran services?
Yeah.
I don't know what that means.
In fact, Dr. Hopes, do you want to weigh in on that?
Yes, Mr. Chair. We have met with Veterans Affairs and had discussions with both the federal and the state veterans services organizations. The concept is to have a comprehensive veteran service center where the VA would operate a medical clinic. The wraparound services would be mental health services, as well as sort of reentry services. A lot of these veterans, are not ready to enter the workforce. We also found out when something that none of us had thought about is female veterans with children and then are homeless, and they are not able to be accommodated in some of the other facilities because they have children. So that was an unmet need nationally, and we do have some here in Manatee County. So when you talk about wraparound services, those are all the services necessary to help that veteran transition out of homelessness into permanent housing, employment, mental health services, medical services. A very small portion of the building would be accommodating the transitional housing. The majority of the facility would be our current Veterans Services Department, as well as a number of federal Veterans Administration programs.
But only services for homeless, not other veteran services.
I think it's envisioned that while we are talking about the primary, the transitional housing application, let's put it this way. If we have 74 homeless veterans and we transition them into housing, we no longer have those homeless veterans. And there are needs for other veteran services that we don't have in the immediate area. So that was the intent. And apparently it is something that has been talked about for years here, because when I toured the building, that's when the discussion happened, that one of the ideas was to have a veteran services center in transitional housing. And so that was the genesis long before I arrived, and I think before a number of these county commissioners were elected as well.
Because otherwise you have to go all the way to Bay Pines.
Bay Pines.
So I
Right.
could see it being a service, because there's a lot of veterans.
Yeah, when we were in Tallahassee, we went to Veteran Services and had a great discussion. It was our last meeting of the day. We were all actually pretty exhausted, sort of dragged in there for this one last meeting, and then we were so pleasantly surprised by the meeting. We talked about the space that we had downtown. They were thrilled, basically told us the VA is looking to expand in a county of your size, because we've been growing so much. You should have more services, and we think we can, they were willing to meet with Bay Pines and get them down here, and it was a really positive meeting that we all sort of came out of, on a big high note when we left Tallahassee. Councilman Sanders.
Thank you. Has the county considered any other properties for the veteran services, like Mrs. Whitmore's 17th Street out there, and will the city be glad to give you all the density you want to build something out there and combine that with the services she's requesting It sounds like it's all be more functional there because Turning Points is there, all the other services are there, the land's there, there's some buildings there. Why wouldn't that be considered or put on the table? And you have 74 veterans homeless. Everybody wants to service those people. Nobody should come away from this thing. We're trying to move them in any other area. That's not the case. We're trying to move them in the best area to be serviced, and maybe even some potential long-term services there, because that area is designed kind of for that. But we have 232 homeless people in our county. And how are we, that was the number that he frowned me, that's the number Suncoast gave me, I don't know. I didn't go out and count them, you know. How much? 1,300 students on the street?
Yeah.
Really? Well, they're not counting. I just know what I'm told. So it's more than that. So the need is greater. To your point. So how do you match up with that we're not taking action on that we're only taking care of one segment versus services? Because there's services in Sarasota. I'm on that committee. There's services in Sarasota that are pretty good. They're not big enough, and they get a lot of private donations, and they do a lot more than we do with those homeless services. So that's my opinion, only my opinion. And so I say, and you're putting $15 million. That's a lot of dough. You could do it probably, because to make that facility work, I'm told by a developer that bid on that's very expensive because it's not designed for anything but a jail. You know, it makes a good jail, and it'll always be a good jail. But won't be a good apartment type complex without very expensive renovation. So you got 15 million you've earmarked for that out of the ARPA funds. I assume that's correct, 13 to 15 million, something like that you've earmarked out of the ARPA funds. And why can't you take that and put that all out there together, and then help some other people as you transition those people into permanent homes? Then you can have some, and you probably would open the door to a lot more funding, federally and state, to help with this during the year. And then the burden wouldn't be on the city or the county. It would be a shared opportunity. I wanted Commissioner to sit here and listen to that, but I can talk to him later about that.
Oh, yeah. Should we get on with some answers for you here? Commissioner Cruz.
Yeah, let's point out, it's not a matter of just helping one or another. This is part of the problem with government or anything for that matter, is you can't always simultaneously help everyone simultaneously. There's only so much money, there's only much time in the day. This was a property that was looked upon for affordable housing for everybody. It was declined. We now have an empty building sitting there. This was an option that we got the clerk and the sheriff to say, okay, we'll allow this particular thing. If we just say, okay, well, let's attribute 6 units to vets and 6 units to single moms and 6 units here, we're not going to move the needle on anyone. This is, and different people have different wraparound service needs. So consolidating gives some benefit of getting the VA, getting the federal government involved in there. So that's how the vet thing came up. There are thousands of homeless here and in Sarasota. We can't build thousands of units all at the same time. So, I get what you're saying. I don't disagree with what you're saying. I wish we can build one big complex for all the homeless students and their family, and one big complex for all of the vets, and house every homeless person in the entire country and live in peace. But that's not physically possible. So it's just starting a process. The 15 million, you're right. It's not, I'm the one who said it on the dais. It's not going to come close to fixing this thing. That's why we're looking at the state. That's why we met with Veteran Affairs up at Tallahassee. That's why we're talking to Representative Buchanan about doing stuff on the federal level to make this happen. And yes, it's a lot of money, but everything's a lot of money. You need to put something like this, particularly something like this, closer to your government agencies like the VA, closer to your transit to get people to use it, because you want people to be able to get on a bus and go to work and do other things. Land down here is very expensive. We're talking now 8 figures for what's effectively a tear down building. The $15 million wouldn't buy you a couple of acres over here. So if you're going to put it even remotely close to here, the land's going to be something which we already have. And right now, construction costs are $2 to $250 a foot. So even if you got the land for free and there was no other cost for design whatsoever, you're building 60,000 square feet. That's, we've got a lot of opportunity across the street. It's something we're looking at. Nothing's been definitive. The first $2 million of the $15 million is for design and engineering to check viability. So I think we should get that done before we all just kind of start making stuff up here, just like I am. I mean, we don't have the data to support it, much like you don't have the data to support the city hall at this stage. It's a concept that we're looking into.
I agree with everything you said, but you just said something I wanted to, and I know you was just bringing that number out of there. You said we couldn't buy a couple acres for $15 million. Well, we just heard that we're proposing to sell City Hall and 3 acres for $10 million. So I'd hope that you would help me out there. That's not enough money. I'm not against selling City Hall. I'm not arguing with you. I'm just making a point that
You've had the floor for half the meeting, sir. Carry on.
Yeah.
Okay. Commissioner Satcher, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This project, and I think that we could look at a lot of projects that have been proposed in Manatee County's past, and I imagine, Bradenton City might be the same way. I just wouldn't be as familiar. But the bottom line is when you have a problem that presents itself and then you have a potential solution that, is in government speak, and when you're talking on things this big, a doable solution, you need to move on it. Now, I am not 100%, as Commissioner Cruz stated, it's a concept. I'm not 100% saying that this veterans, facility has to be in that particular building. But I do think the commission made some pretty big commitments and unanimous votes as far as that's something we cared about and we're going to move forward on and be willing to put our resources towards. If we have something else that's going to work better, fine. But, 5 years from now, that building will be a tear-down building for sure. And we will be paying to destroy it rather than helping a lot of people. I'm really excited about the ideas to have some buildings down here that could bring in a lot of people and some of the higher height restrictions and things like that. And so I guess just the vision I want to cast, and you can either agree or not, is okay. But my thought would be, what if we could make it to where there's so much economic activity and tourist activity and, people from the suburbs here in Manatee County and north and south coming to Bradenton because it is a hub and a place to be where you want to be for date night. What if we could take it to that level to where, 74 veterans in a structured environment was just a blip, wouldn't even notice, as far as everyone would feel comfortable and love being downtown. So I don't know if I'm making that clear or not, but I just want to say that, that a rising tide is going to lift all boats. And so we might be in a situation where our county is so blessed and fortunate that we could help people that others might not be looking to help and still be able to reach our economic goals, still be able to grow our city and keep our city and county safe the way we want to see it. And so that would be an amazing situation. So maybe this is the venue that we would go forward for that. And if not, I'm not going to die on that hill, as they say. But I will say that we did make some commitments, and we do need to figure out a way to carry through on those commitments. You don't You don't start a tower, you don't start a building unless you figure out how much it's going to cost first. And, we made a commitment to help homeless vets. Also, just an aside, if you get capability, you can be flexible about how to use it. So, if we were to have a fully renovated, ready-to-go building with, places to cook and places to do medical services, and we decide, you know what, there's just not enough, the volume of need for veterans is not high enough, hey, I bet we could come up with a lot of options that it would be beneficial to the city and the county and the people. So, and of course, I know that's all our goal. We're here as public servants. So that's the goal. But nobody is interested in making downtown Bradenton anything other than a great, safe, wonderful place to be. I know that I enjoy it, and I think a lot of people are going to be able to enjoy it in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Should we close discussion, do public comment, and then just do once around the room for closing thoughts as soon as the county attorney addresses the group?
The old City Hall property.
I'm sorry, I did.
And I've just been
Yes, if we could get a
patiently waiting for
synopsis on the
everybody.
old City Hall,
Yeah,
and then we
so
will go to public
just-
comment, and then we'll go once around the room for
So,
final thoughts.
I would like to explain that and just make one other point about what we do with these properties. So it is true that property, we acquired that property through eminent domain for the Wares Creek project. And there are some covenants and responsibilities that tie that property up. They're not insurmountable, but there are some things we have to work through. The first is that it was funded 50-50 between the county and SwiftMud as part of the state's local match for the federal money for Wares Creek. And we have an agreement with SwiftMud that says that if we sell the property, we have to give them either their half, which is $3 million, there's a total of $3 million, or 50% of the sale price, whichever is greater. So at a minimum, we have to pay them $3 million. So that kind of, puts a little bit of a market value cloud on the property. Dr. Hopes and I, in a recent discussion, learned from our staff that there are still some unresolved issues with the Corps regarding the total value of our local match. And my understanding from talking to the county engineer in the past week is he is trying to work through those issues with the Corps, but until those are resolved, we probably are not in a position to put that property on the market. I'm hopeful that will be resolved quickly, but I don't want to represent it will until we've heard back from the county engineer as to what the status is. Mr. Chair, I would like to make one other point about these properties, and this is a point that's for my own client, the Board of County Commissioners. I will leave it to my good friend and colleague, Mr. Judicial, to advise the City Council on this issue. But there are a number of ways that local governments can dispose of real property, put it on the market for sale, and put it into private hands. If you want to have some say in what happens with that property once you have sold it, for example, if you want to make sure that it is put to uses that bring people to downtown in some fashion, so that it's not 100% condos, but also has other things going on, that needs to be incorporated into the offers and into the terms of that property being put on the street for sale, rather than it just goes to the highest bidder. Because if you sell it just to the highest bidder, you surrender that control once you deed the property over, and it's anybody's guess what will actually happen with the property. That's all I have, sir.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Cruz,
There's a
you're on
number
the
of
board,
ways
sir.
you can describe it.
This is just a legal question for you. Okay, so if we sell it, we have to pay the greater of $3 million or 50% of the
Yes,
sale.
sir.
Is there anything within this agreement that prohibits us from just doing a 99-year ground
Yes,
lease?
there is. They thought of that. Yeah, but we didn't. Sorry, I didn't write it. They did, but.
But that said, George, I mean, we should be able to get 6.5, 7 for that. I mean, it's not like we're.
Oh yeah, we're still getting 50 cents on the dollar above the $6 million. You still get the maximum dollars. We're not trying to screw them over and just call it 6 and walk away. Yeah.
I already tried that route with him, but no go on the land lease. So let's open this up to public comment. Is there anyone from the public who would like to come and comment on any of the items that we discussed after the comp plan? Seeing none, we will do We'll go once around the horn for final thoughts. We'll start with Councilman Sanders.
I'll give up my time since I've had half of it.
Thank you, sir. Councilwoman Barnaby.
I would like to thank you, Mr. Chairman, and county commissioners for being such gracious hosts and putting this meeting together. I think things work better when we work together, and we all care about this community, and we all care about the citizens. So I'm very hopeful that we'll be able to get some of these things taken care of.
Thank you, ma'am. Councilwoman Coker, before you go, we do have one caller. I forgot to go to the phone for public comments. So we do have one caller. Caller, you'll have 3 minutes. Please state your first and last name and your county of residence.
Would caller ending in 445, please press star 6 to unmute.
Glenn Gibolina for the record. So I'm watching you here on YouTube. I cannot believe we're even having this conversation about the jail. So as long as I'm watching everybody, can I see a show of hands of all our elected officials who have served in the armed forces?
No, public comment is not for interaction. It is for you to make your 3-minute statement, sir.
Well, I am making it, and I'm appalled that we're even having this conversation. All right. Veterans are homeless for a reason. They're not because they want to be homeless. They may be between jobs. They may be in a tight spot. 74. Those are the ones you know about. You can double that number all day down. I guarantee you, most of you have not looked at the best practices or the best models around our country, like Kansas City, Austin, Texas, some of the other places that are cutting edge, to really know that the veterans are not a problem at all. It's funny, when the developer wanted to come in there and build high luxury condos, the judges had a concern over safety, so they 86'd it. But guess what? The judges don't have a concern over veterans because they know the value of that person. Apparently, you've lost sight of the value of our veterans. And I'm not going to sit here and listen to you say, well, move it over here and you can do this. The $15 million was earmarked for the jail. That's what you should do for. You don't need City of Bradenton's approval of this. This is a county deal. Do what you say you were going to do for the citizens and move forward. As far as funding, you're going to get dash vouchers. Currently, the daily rate for a homeless veteran with the roof over their head is $147. And it's about, on a monthly, it's about $1,200. So that facility will be self-funded. As far as starting a new building, the land, the infrastructure, you're looking at 5 times that cost, easy. We've got the land, we've got the building, you got CARES funding, we're not dipping into our reserves. This is a win-win for everybody. And I'm sorry, if the city of Bradenton isn't too embarrassed to have veterans walking down their main street because they might be a detriment to the community, I have a problem with you. You need to move forward with this program, and you will be surprised.
Okay, thank you, caller.
What a right decision that was.
Thank you, caller. Councilwoman Coker, final thoughts.
Well, I just was going to reiterate what Mary Ann said, and also, I hope we keep doing this. I think it can only be good stuff. Pardon? I'm fine. I'm fine.
Let's give our staff some time to.
Madam Vice Mayor.
Thank you. I'm glad to go before my colleague, Commissioner Serbia, because I want to say great discussion. We have the potential. I know I've watched her say that a lot, and it's so fitting, and it is fitting for today. Potential for smart growth. It's like a dream with us working together, but we can make it real. I look forward to more of these meetings. The cities, the counties have a lot to gain from us doing this. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Commissioner Satcher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all the council members for being here and the public. I think this was a great meeting and friendly atmosphere, and so I look forward to seeing more of that and having the mayor here in the future. And I also look forward to working together to solve problems. And there's a saying that the opportunity of a lifetime has to be seized in the lifetime of the opportunity. And we're seeing that, obviously there's one topic we've been talking about a lot, but there's a lot of things that fit that description that if we move on, it can be, it could make a real difference for the future of our community. And, but if we sit and table and debate and put off, then we'll be looking at years down the road talking about these things. I mean, every time, I'll just be honest, every time I hear someone talk about homeless families not having a place to go in Manatee County, I'm pretty sure there are organizations that have come before boards in this area. There's an organization that came before the county and asked for funds for that and were turned down before they ever got here multiple times to help homeless families. And then now we say, why don't we have a place for homeless families? Well, it's because you wouldn't fund the Salvation Army's small and reasonable request when it should have been funded. And so, so I don't want to be in that situation, a year, 2 years, however many years down the road. I want us to solve problems when we can and when it's appropriate. I don't think government is the best solution to most problems. I think that getting the private sector involved any way we can is a good idea and helpful for everyone. But in those situations where we fit the description of a solution, I want to step forward and do that whenever possible. And once again, I am not speaking to just one issue. I'm just encouraging us all to be bold in some of the decisions, and they may not end up being perfect, but we could make adjustments moving forward after that. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Satcher. Commissioner Whitmore.
I wanted to, I'm sure many don't know, but Councilwoman Barnaby and Councilwoman Pam Coachman and our chair's mother used to be cheerleaders together at Manatee Hospital. So I'm sure you all didn't know that. So I had to, so it is a very small world. And a lot of you don't know Pam's mother in 77. Yeah, I'm going to say how old I am. No, I'm not going to say, but I'm going to tell you 1977.
Oh, I thought you were 77.
No.
She looks amazing.
I know.
You look great. Yeah.
But her mother taught me everything I knew. I was a nurse in PICU, and her mother was a nursing assistant, Miss Mitchell, Margie Mitchell, and it's a small world that we're all kind of sitting here and had a deja vu minute, so I had to say something. I totally agree on the 90-day. We have to keep this up because we are working on projects that we all need to work together on. This is the first that we've had with the city. They actually haven't asked us for money, so I very much appreciate it. Could you please?
We're not out of here yet.
No, you talk. If you could please consider the thoughts about that property. I just know it's going to work. And hopefully that we can all work on something or do something in the future. The veterans, you heard Mr. Gibolino, I hadn't heard of any other properties. In passing, I talked to Scott Hopes, and he kind of mentioned that property, and I told him the history of it, because I have been trying for years. The poor doctor still hasn't sold it. And there's a developer that's building in Bradenton right now next to Blake, and he looked at it, and he said it doesn't meet the building codes anymore. That's why he didn't buy it. So, and we do have to work, and Glenn's probably listening, steaming away, but we do have to work with the city of Bradenton because we have to get permitting, and I think you may have to rezone it for residential, I don't know, or whatever you would use. So that is going to happen. So we all need to work together. If we find another place that's already built that we can continue on, fine. All the feds and everybody else thinks of is the money that we're getting from, where the monies we're using that we've committed, and if we want to get federal funds, it has to be something. But again, we have tried to fill that building before, and this is the first time, I guess, that the sheriff and the clerk have agreed that this may be something. And remember, veterans are very structured. So this is a place where not just a regular homeless person would be able to go. They're used to following rules, and maybe that's why they are where they are today. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Servia.
Great meeting. Talent wins games, and teamwork wins championships. So that's what I'll leave you guys with. And together, we are going to be champions. We have a lot of opportunity here. We have the cheerleaders to cheer us on. Let's do it.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Cruz.
Yeah, I don't have much to say, but thank everyone for the conversation. I mean, this is something that I've been saying we need to do. That's why we had the joint task force, if you will, from council governments, myself and Councilman Sanders and Charlie Kennedy from the school board, all had breakfast to discuss how all of our entities can work together. We invited Palmetto, but it was just the three of us at the breakfast. But hopefully we can start incorporating more of us together, because this is the kind of conversation we need to have, because we're all going to have issues. There's all something that we want, but there's all something that we're concerned about giving. And until we know both sides of it and we can figure out how we can work together, we're not going to meaningfully move anything. And it's conversations like this out in the open where we can have direct dialogue back and forth as a group that's going to help Manatee County. So thank you all for coming. I look forward to the next one.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'll just say in closing, we handled everything from, ways to get to the beach, which, important issues. Ways to get to the beach is an important issue. And connectivity downtown, the comp plan, it wasn't super exciting, I'm sure, if people were watching, but that is local government at its core. I mean, that is a hugely important issue that local governments have to tackle, and us working together on it could have a lasting impact for decades to come for our area. So we did tackle important issues. And when it comes to the veterans facility across the street, the potential facility across the street, I don't want people to think I'm cooling to the idea of housing veterans. I have the same goal in mind as everyone else, but I really thought about it over the past couple of days since Commissioner Servia brought it up, and she is on to something, and she is right. We don't want to put ourselves in a situation where, our good intentions are taken advantage of, which happens all the time. And I don't want it to all of a sudden become this magnet for people from all over the state or country to show up and take advantage of Manatee County taxpayers, because it will be something that it will have been our actions that resulted in that. And I don't want to put taxpayers at risk like that. It's like so many other things that we try not to put taxpayers at risk for. So devil's in the details, and that's something that I hope Mr. Washington and Dr. Hopes will think about as they're working on that specific project and working on the scope of that. I do hope that the city will keep an open mind on Commissioner Whitmore's idea for 17th Avenue. I think that could be an important community asset, and there are already services located in the area, so it does make sense for that to go to that location. I really hope that the council will keep an open mind when it comes to selling the current city hall. I don't want to get up into your business, but from a business standpoint, putting that on the tax rolls will be beneficial to you in the long run. You don't just look at the sale price, of course. You will generate millions of dollars in taxes there, and depending what it's used for, if it ends up being commercial versus residential, think of the economic generator that it would be, and think of the jobs that it would create right downtown. And we're always trying to create living and jobs in the same locations. So that helps with our road and our transportation situation. So if we're working on affordable housing near downtown and you are adding jobs downtown, all this it goes together. So I hope you'll keep an open mind on that. I do thank Councilwoman Coker for bringing up the library. I hope that our board will have further discussions on the library property, because if you're looking to sell City Hall, we're looking to, it's a long process, but we're looking to eventually sell and put Wares Creek property back into 4 acres on Wares Creek back into private hands. And we have 3 acres on the river at the library. If we could relocate that facility, one, we would probably end up with a new facility. That would be great. And like Commissioner Cruz said, it doesn't matter. It does matter, but it's less significant as to where that library needs to be. It does not need to be on the waterfront and off of the tax rolls. So I hope that we'll discuss further relocating the library. So anyway, all in all, I thought it was a great meeting, and I look forward to getting back together. If there's no further business, we're adjourned.